The Revenge of By the Numbers is brought to you by eSportsBet, and they are still running their World's Prediction Series 2 competition, a 10 million USDT free-to-enter competition, which is not just free to enter with up to 300,000 USDT for first place if you do well with your bets and predictions, but as well as being free to enter, you can get a little head start if you go to the Discord, discord.gg/eSportsBet, message the mod mail, say you're here for the 50,000 DJT. They won't just give you 1,000 DJT to play with, they'll give you 50,000 and get going. You can make loads of predictions, free to enter. Have a go at it. Not only CSGO, Valorant, League of Legends, Dota, Rainbow Six, FIFA, pretty much every big game you can think of.
Chris is not still in the picture. Oh, still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
He gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus, he does something!
Looking for a stack and he connects it. Oh, and he gets a third as well. Surely he's not going to pull this off. Oh, Caldera, the man, the myth, the beast. Nairo, no help really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got 3. Fine. Oh my God, Nairo! Unbelievable.
Welcome, everybody, to another week of Counter-Strike news. It is Revenge by the Numbers, and, well, we are going to get into the thick of things. But first, Thorin, how are you doing, dude? You have a good week?
In general, yeah. I mean, I always enjoy watching the major. I mean, look, we'll get to some of the other reasons why later, but it does seem like every major now has to have some feckless drama around it. That's just point. Like, obviously, we'll get into it later, but you know that people aren't in esports just for the games, mate. When like everything, you know what? I'll give you the best example. Do you know when the first LAN happened after the whole online situation, which was the IEM Cologne in Germany, that studio LAN? And remember, the whole thing was every caster just LAN. We're back on LAN. This is LAN, of course. The thing about LAN is LAN, and it wasn't even a real LAN, by the way. It was a studio.
No, it was a studio.
Like,
yeah,
the same principle now is just with this crowd. Like the reason why I can't handle it, I'll give you the quick rant, is this, Semmler. Because they already did this from ESL for 10 years with the fucking polls. They told me they were the magical superior people who just can create a crowd that's By the way, I don't get it myself because I've been to like the Columbus crowd that was amazing. I've been to every Cologne one that was a banger every time. I don't really understand. By the way, you know, on some fucked up angle there, if someone actually wanted to push the agenda against Carmack, is that some sort of xenophobia, mate? That only your people can be an awesome crowd? But no, wait. Because now it turns out when you have to pander to probably the most fucked up crowd of all time, the only one that will chant in unison, you take it up the arse, implication being that's a really bad thing to do. What the fuck game are we playing right now?
23 plus
CSGO. It's mad, isn't it? I know. So like, that's the only thing that soured me a little bit. The games are all good. The teams are interesting. The actual CS is great. I'm all into it. Talent's good, but then I will say that's why I keep bringing it up, because the talent are the ones who can't shut the fuck up about the crowd. I know that the ESL intern guy on Twitter's good. That's sort of his job. But why did the talent have to do it? Like, mate, Launders, I love calling him out because I'll just do it every time. I'm just that sort of person. I think you do some bullshit, I'll call you out. He does some tweets, mate, that pander so much. It's mental. Like, he did one where he was like, wow, the crowd is still cheering for the other people and they're not even Brazilian. It's like about 50 crowds in the world then. Like, why is that being presented as all like now? So apparently now Brazilians invented cheering for people who aren't Brazilian. This is mental, mate. This is just mental. I mean, look, I do know he was in the fucking Blast Royal Arena where it's like, if it ain't Australis, fuck them, even if they're Danish. Maybe to him, that was like...
That
like,
could be a mind-expanding experience for him.
Come on, man. I know. What the fuck?
It's true though. It is true. But I mean, then again, like if you coming into this event, it really did feel like everybody was just going into it thinking you better hope, like the ESL themselves cynically create this whole fan experience for the group stage because they know themselves that the odds of a Brazilian team making it to the playoffs are so slim that and that the fans probably are going to be there primarily to see the Brazilian teams in Brazil because they're such diehard fans for Brazilian teams that that whole narrative has really shaped itself into the fans are sick and they're here for the Brazilian teams. That's the home arena for the Brazilian teams, even for the South American teams, because they were getting hyped for 9Z as well.
Yes.
So it's just that whole narrative now has even seeped into the commentator's mind where it's just like, oh, look, they're cheering for somebody else. It's like, yes, they could cheer for somebody else the entire time. And if they're fans of CS, which probably most of them are, if they're there, they're paying money to be there. they probably will cheer for somebody else. It's just that when there's a Brazilian team, then they're going to cheat.
That was also the joke I was going to give you, mate. I was going to make people think that I'd been converted because, spoiler, if you look at the actual results, did my take age like a motherfucker or what? You know, I told you, actually, I don't think home crowds do help you. By the way, the entire Last Dance lineup across those two Brazilian teams, last place, 0 matches won, of course. So that means, by your own logic, I'll use your own logic against your fans. That means Imperial and Zero Nation are extra shit because they had fans actually like buoying them up and they still couldn't win. No. The joke would be this. I was mistaken, guys. I apologize. You guys were right. When you said that the crowd would help their teams, I naively thought you meant, you know, with energy, metaphorically, they'd make them feel confident. I didn't know they would literally help them. Because here's a detail people get getting lost on. It's the classic by the numbers approach when we'll break something down. One of the tricks people love to do is they'll pick a fact and they'll use it as a distraction to pretend there are no other facts involved. So I'll give you an example. You might have seen that people were talking about the fact that, like, oh, you can't hear anything inside the headphones. You can't hear people chanting. Here's what they said, Sam, that's very key. You can't hear people saying stuff like "go B." You know what? I agree with them. I'll bet that's right. But you know what they didn't mention, Semmler? You can still hear if the crowd goes "ooh" on unison as you put your crosshair over a guy who's hiding behind the vent on Nuke. That's the problem, you see, guys. You're right. If you could hear someone just going like, you go B and then one's flanking behind it with 2 flashes, yeah, that would be a real big problem. But it's also a massive problem. And by the way, it was basically admitted. Those IHC guys said it. I heard a few other people comment on it. Like, I think that for real was actually affecting the games because the IHC one's the one to me. I know IHC is not some top team or something, but mate, they were playing really well in this game. They were out playing 0 Nation and magically 0 Nation just kept coming back in these rounds and winning clutches. And it's like, because the entire crowd was just trying to cheat for them. It was so wild. And in that scenario, by the way, I will always blame one person and it will be the TO. It's not the fans. Because here's the problem. It's the TO's job to stop you being able to hear those people. Because as I've told you on these past episodes, we're just not tennis, are we? We're not a sport where you can actually get people to agree. Come on now, everyone be quiet and have a bit of decorum. First of all, it's not the country for that anyway. But you can't get them to that anyway. Everyone's 16 and they're all in fucking idiot off the internet and they've never been punched in the face. Well, maybe not in this crowd, but you know. And so, yeah, that whole thing is like, I hate that, mate, because it's not that every player can hear it, but when I know it's even possible at all, it's like, oh, now everything's called into question. Is that a genius 1v1 or did you hear someone, you know, like it just ruins the match for me.
It kills the integrity of the tournament. Once you know that it's possible, it does kill the integrity of the tournament. And I think we're reaching the tipping point where tournament organizers are going to have to start rethinking it. We're gonna have to start looking at the trade-offs again, right? And we spent all week long talking about this because it happened in TI, where in TI, the Dota 2 International, in case you're wondering, that's their world championship, the most prestigious event, massive prize pool, everything on the line.
Yep.
And it became appallingly clear that the players could hear the commentators.
It was one of the few times, right, that they didn't have the booths that they normally have because it was in a different location. Yeah, exactly.
They could hear the commentary clearly, and in a game like Dota, if you can hear the commentator saying like, "Oh, they have double damage rune" or something like that,
yep. Or they do Roshan or something, yeah, exactly.
Sort of situation, and that's critical information. And you have multiple examples of how that could have tilted matches, and it just calls into question the integrity of the entire tournament. And we're having that exact same situation here, where once again, people seem to just expect that they don't understand how, like, all right, so the way that I see it is that booths, you put booths in so that you can blast commentary to the crowd, because the booths are going to stop the commentary. It's going to make it much more difficult for the players to make out anything that the commentators say. What you don't understand, unless you've been in this environment, is that when the crowd cheers, it's a physical thing. It's so you can blast white noise and have sound canceling headphones. That doesn't matter. You feel it physically when you're on the stage, when the crowd goes nuts, or when people are oohing or awing or whatever. When you get 1,000 people oohing, you know, really putting it in, you feel that. So there's no way to limit players. You know, booths wouldn't change that. The headsets won't change that. The players are going to hear that and feel that kind of experience. So people keep saying like, oh, well, the answer is obviously to put, you know, why don't they have the booths? They don't understand that the booths are just there to mitigate the commentators. Because then that's that trade-off, right? Because the other form of cheating is obviously if you don't mitigate the commentators in games like Counter-Strike, Dota, League of Legends, where information is critical and not everybody has access to the information, so that some stuff is secret. If you're saying the secret stuff out loud, that could help the opponents, and that fucks the entire thing. So you have the boost to negate the commentary. You don't have the boost to negate the crowd. The only way I think you can do this is either we're gonna have to start asking those questions again. Do you just take out the commentary from the studio, from the stadium entirely? Do you remove commentary entirely?
I mean, here's the thing I have. There's two aspects I have that are a big problem for me.
Well, let me do that. Let me do the two. Let me do the two real quick. Because so it's just like you either have to cancel out the commentary in the arena, and so then commentary is no longer a thing. You don't have to worry about boosts. You don't have to worry about information getting to the players that they wouldn't have through the game itself or through the fans. Or, and I think we've talked about this in the past, you actually do have to take the players off the stage. And you have to put them under the seats or something like that, where maybe they're close to the arena, so that when the big winning moment or whatever happens, when they hoist the trophy, they can walk out and hoist the trophy. But you need to take the players away and put them in a place where they won't be able to actually hear the fans. They won't actually be able to be impacted by the fans at all. And start. Do we go all the way and say, okay, integrity is of the utmost importance for our tournament. We need to do everything to maximize integrity. We're going to actually go that far and say, okay, in the interest of a maximum integrity event, we're going to actually turn this pretty much into a studio event. The fans are going to be here, but the players are going to be isolated so that they really do play like the highest in the CS. So then it's just a series of trade-offs afterwards, right? Like in between, that's the scale. And so you keep the players on the stage, but then you have to think about everything else. And so somewhere along that scale, it's taking the players off of the stage and putting them behind the stage, or putting them under the seats behind the stage, or something like that, where they're a bit more isolated and they can't really interact with the fans in any way. And we have to figure out, we have to have that discussion again. Where on the scale are we going to be in esports? Because esports is not sports. It doesn't work that way. You can't, when you need to keep certain information hidden, otherwise it compromises the integrity of the game. Sports isn't like that. You see the ball, you run after the ball. It's simple. Everybody knows what they're doing. It doesn't work like that in Counter-Strike, and we're actually dealing with this because I think it's like the first time that we're really getting stadium events with 10,000 fans or thousands of fans. Like stadium events. Like, how do we handle this balance? How do we balance this to have a fair game? All right, sorry, go ahead, go for it, dude.
Like, the problem I have is this. Like, I agree with all that premise that you have to rethink the whole thing. And here's the key thing, not from what happens in sports or esports. It's like you said, it's a unique scenario. We need a new solution. So the problem is, we'll get to that in a second. One thing I'll just say is this. One thing that does piss me off, because as I alluded to before, I have always thought it is incredibly whack that the same ESL that host the Cologne event always go, of course, our best events kind of eats it, the fans, incredible. Now they go, Brazil, we love you, the best fans. Like, why is like your home country the one getting the shit? It's the best event by far.
Well, we both know why,
every metric. So this is the thing I can't handle about it. When have you ever heard this problem happen at Cologne? Can someone explain that to me? When did the following things ever happen at ESL Cologne? Fans en masse cheating, fans shouting things that, by the way, in the modern day, not my words, would be described by governments like the ESL German government as literal hate speech. Why is that just a thing that we have to accept now? Why is it where you're taking a fan who's just joking doing this or whatever? But spoiler, like, I bet 1 billion people there were doing that. I bet loads of that shit.
I mean, we're laughing about the fans giving middle fingers to players. Like, oh, that's a cool thing now. You got a bunch of people, the fans are flicking off the players, and that's that. We're gonna be like, oh, I love that. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why are you doing that? Why are you saying that that's a good thing? You should be shouting the fans out and being like, hey, fuckheads, don't give middle fingers to the players. Like, why are we condoning this kind of behavior?
So that's the problem I have. Every fan behavior that's negative, I've just never heard of it happen at IM Cologne, ESL1 Cologne. Never heard of it ever. I've only heard of great matches, great environment, awesome crowd, capacity could be like, 20,000 there. So, man, every 16,000 or something if they sell out. Like, everything across the board is brilliant. And it's a bloody ESL event. It's never having these problems blasted. It's never on the IM Rio. Then we'll flip it, because what this suggests to me, Semmler, is it's something about either Cologne or that venue or the way the sound setup is. There must be something with that. It's the only one that's never had any of these. No one's ever even claimed this happened, as far as I know.
But you remember when there was the Polish cheering section and Taz had to tell him to shut up to let Olaf speak? Like that's
just for an interview, though. That's not the end of the world.
But you know what I mean? Like, there are, like, you can. I think this whole thing just boils down to culture. Like, this whole thing just boils down to culture. And like, you see the culture, and like the European culture is like high trust environment, like very, very culturally homogenous in a way, because everybody understands like we're going to kind of behave in this fashion. And maybe because it's further north, people tend to be quieter, so they're not as hype. Like, I don't know, there's a bunch of factors that can play into it, but you're right in saying that Cologne doesn't have these issues, and probably because you're mixing a bunch of different cultures together, right? You're getting the French, the Germans, the Poles, like everybody from Europe is traveling, and then you get some North Americans that are flying over as well. You get the Brits, you got everybody involved in Cologne. It's a true international event.
Holy shit, the first time ever when multiculturalism was a sort of strength almost. So Found one way. It must be the exception that proves the rule, I guess.
There you go. Exactly. There's always an outlier.
I agree with what you said, though. The thing that does tilt me the most is just this notion that all we're allowed on the menu to choose from is other Counter-Strike events, other esports games, or just sports ball. And I'm so bored with the sports ball angle, because I'll give you one that might really bake your noodle, guys. For all we know, maybe soccer would have twice as many viewers if they actually had like a better setup, better way of showing the game. We don't know. That's the problem. There's no fucking control group for that, is there? It was already the biggest sport back when they had boomer dog shit one angle for the TV, and you didn't even. And dude, I know people in the UK, loads of them used to just listen on the radio. So then should we listen on radio? Because the World Cup used to be on the radio. It doesn't make any sense, guys. So what I would say is this. You're getting close to it. Obviously, we're not going to come up with the solution in 10 minutes here. But basically, what you're saying is accurate. Here's what you need to do that no one does. And if you notice, it's the lens I keep putting esports industry things through. You know, when me and Monty made the Flashpoint format, that one where it was like 3 different group stages with selections for the groups between, and then you went into a double Olympia. The reason we did that is because we sat down before we did the whole thing and said, what type of tournament do we want? Like, do we want one, for example, where upsets can happen? Do we want one where usually the best team's going to get through? Do we want one where you create rival? We actually sat down and said, what are we selecting for with this format? That's what you need to do with your setup. So one thing you're getting to here, that's a very key point people are missing, is, yeah, you don't want the players in a hermetically sealed box with no fan interaction and just white lights, and they don't even see their opponent, because in that scenario, look, it's not the same as being at home because you're not as comfy as at home, but you won't have any fan component. Like, for example, I imagine you probably won't have the same sort of panic and fear, and the Cloud9s and the Rooks of the world won't be shitting themselves, and the Fallens and the Phases of the world won't have that little 10% extra edge. Yeah, that's true. So what we're saying is we want to get rid of the cheating, but we want to still keep some of that. And we also want, because the players tell us it's so important, and I don't disbelieve them, I just don't think this is important to me. They also claim, I really want to have interaction with the fans too. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm actually thinking we need some sort of unique hybrid setup for real, where it's like you are in some sort of a container where you don't get the info, but then some, you know, here's the analogy, and everyone's going to get it as second I say it, and it'll dawn on you. It's a very good idea. Remember back in the day in CSGO, before they changed it, where at the end of the half, they opened the mics for both teams, didn't they? And everyone, yes, back then used to just talk shit and all that, because but the point was, when you knew it was coming up, you'd quickly get ready. Right, get ready, and then you get everything you can in there. Fuck him on, and then quickly it closes and it, right, play the next half, right? I'm not joking. Remember at Blast when we were there in 2020, they were doing that like frosted glass in a clutch, so you can't look at the guy's eyes, and then it unfrosts after. Something akin to this, some kind of a building where the logic would be like this, Semmler. Either the sound is piped in, and maybe you instantly, like the walls that were like, you know, glassed and clouded suddenly become like transparent, and you can see the fans. Basically, the idea would be fans would know the second the round ends, the defuse happens, the last kill happens, that like glass busts out like that. Or we pipe the sound in, and then you all shout like, yeah, Carrigan, whatever. You could do something like that. There could be some sort of a compromise. Like, I'm willing to work on an idea like this. I just feel like the real problem, like I said, if you go right back to the beginning, is do TOs want to be lazy and just go, just pick something that worked before. We know how that works. Or do they want to revolutionize? Because I actually think, by the way, if you could somehow fix this issue, we could go to the ultimate level, because CSGO is already the best view at esport. If we could just get rid of these silly cheating things, we have no problems at all. Who the fuck doesn't like major Counter-Strikes? The shit. So I even think we've just got to have something of it. And the reason why we don't, by the way, and this has been somewhat, you'll have found this yourself, it's the saddest part about the esports industry. You know, everyone tells you, Semmler, that they're all in the esports industry because of their passion and their love. Spoiler, people who are super passionate and love it don't have to tell you every single day. That's what people who are liars, who want to cram it in your head that's where they're like, and convince you. That's what they do, convince you and convince themselves. If you ever meet the execs in esports, the producers in esports, the team org runners, most of them in the modern day aren't there because they're some veteran from esports. They aren't there because they love Counter-Strike. They're here because they wish they were doing FIFA and doing the UEFA Cup finals as a TV producer for Sky or something for football. They wish they worked in Formula One, Semmler, as an executive with all those sponsors. They wish they didn't work at fucking Rogue in the LEC. They wish they worked for Manchester United in the English Premier League. So the problem is, because that's their real dream, they're just trying to do everything like that sport, and their end goal is get out of this fucking shit thing with all the kids playing video games and go there anyway. So sadly, that person I don't think is the guy that's going to do what we want, which is revolutionize the game, come up with some amazing new setup. By the way, if anyone does it, you will be heralded as a genius. I'm telling you, you could have such an impact on this industry.
One thing though that we do need to highlight, and it does have to be taken into account as well in terms of just a cost question, because when everybody under the sun right now in CS:GO, at least, well, I mean, there's two of them left, ESL and Blast, it's very apparent that they are doing everything they can to cut cost and to try and find a way to make this profitable. And that includes making the deals that they have. Abu Dhabi Gaming, for example, with Blast in their World Finals, where they're going to go to their World Finals. And most likely their World Finals are going to be happening in Abu Dhabi Gaming, most likely for the next 3 years, because it's a 3-year deal. And that the only reason I can think of for them doing that is because the Abu Dhabi government is going to comp everything. They're going to probably pay for the stadium, hotels, flights, everything. And so Blast save money and they get a basically free event where they just have to cover a minimum number of a minimum cost, right, in order to make it happen. All right, what I mean by this is, all right, so that's the environment, right, where already tournament organizers are trying to figure out every single way to save money. EPL with Malta, case in point again. Blast going to Paris for the next major. It's not because it's fucking nice in Paris. It's because they're probably going to get most of it paid by the tourism board or something of Paris, who are, you know, desperate to get anybody to come to that city. So that's what's going on there. That sets you the context of like what it is going on in CS:GO. Okay, so the reason why I bring that up is because when people talk about booths, they just think that booths like materialize just materialize on location. You know, you need a booth, good, you get a booth. You know, it's like, no, booths already are prohibitively expensive just to develop a good one. I mean, there was the ghetto version from back in the day, although it did look pretty good, but for like a first iteration, it was the DreamHack booth. You remember where they took literal containers, just a container, cut a hole in it for a window so you could see the players, did the plexiglass, and then put a bunch of insulation in it so that, you know, it became somewhat soundproof. And that was the container. That was the
they looked a bit
booth.
Put it this way, they looked better than they were though, as far as I could tell. They were like a bit ropey. It was almost like cardboard.
Oh, dude, yeah, totally, you know, that was the thing. It was like, you know, you had to find a way to do it so that it didn't cost an arm and a leg, because those TI booths are freaking expensive. They cost a fortune. Okay, so not only do you have to spend the money to make the booth, then you have to spend the money to put the booth together and take it apart again and pack it in a way that it doesn't get damaged, because then you need to ship it to the next event, because you're not going to use it once. If you're going to invest that kind of money into making booths for these teams, you're going to want to use it for several events. You're going to want to use it as much as you can to get the maximum value out of it, right? Especially if it becomes a necessity, it becomes something that you have to run the tournaments. It's like, okay, there's that additional cost. So now we have to be able to transport these booths in Europe. Okay, that's one thing. That was DreamHack strategy, and that made sense because you could just ship them around by truck, and that, okay, fine, fair enough, they were literal containers. But if you have to go on an international circuit kind of thing, the way ESL does, where you're going around the world, that is already going to add an enormous cost to running your tournament, just the booths alone. So I think to be fair, that is the primary reason why they've just completely done away with the idea of using booths, because it's just such a huge cost just for the booths, when it's much cheaper to get 10 headsets. You know, it's much cheaper to just go along that route, figure out what you need to do in terms of like the audio mix in the stadium, and just get the 10 headsets. But
the thing that you were mentioning earlier that people don't understand is the reason the booth doesn't get rid of like the vibration is because literally the booth stood on top of the stage. So when the stage vibrates, it goes through. So people have even said he could build one, but it'd have to almost be like suspended or something.
Yeah.
Or like, so like at that point in time, it's just getting implausible, isn't it? Like no one's going to do that.
It's just the cost involved is just too high. It's too high for the return, where you could just have it, if you just have the headsets. But then if that's the point that we're starting at, where it's the headsets, then we do have to start asking ourselves questions about what kind of audio are we piping into the arena that the players can hear. The commentary, for one, I think is actually a much bigger issue. And this, I keep saying this story over and over again because it's just personal experience. Like, I cast differently in an arena specifically to address this problem. Because I know that the most of the time the players can hear my commentary in the arena, just the headsets, because maybe a player's holding the mic open when he's on TeamSpeak, and all of a sudden, you know, whatever I'm saying is getting broadcast literally into his entire team's headsets. And so I do change it because I have literally watched players react to what I've said while casting when I fucked up. And then I'm like, well, can't make that mistake again. And you just completely change how you cast. You give away as little information as possible. So that obviously, you know, the thing is that obviously affects the quality of the broadcast, which sucks, because not only am I broadcasting to the 5, 10, 12,000 people who are in the stadium, 20, however many thousands are in the stadium, but there's the however many hundreds of thousands that are listening online for a final. So who is worth more at that point, right? In terms of the quality of my commentary, are we going to, because I need to make sure that I'm not giving information away to fans and players in the stadium itself, make the several hundred thousand, the real broadcast that's paying the bills, make that suffer in terms of quality. So what I would think actually now would be the argument and the obvious play is to eliminate commentary in the stadium itself. And so then you don't even need to worry about the cast affecting the integrity of the match. The players aren't going to pick it. And then all you have to worry about are the fans. And then you can start trying to break down that problem of like, when is it okay to cheer for the fans? Like, how are they supposed to be cheering? Are they cheering when K Serrato is about to go, he's peeking right when the guy's coming on the left. And so the fans are cheering when his crosshairs are like, dude, that first round against Gamer Legion on Vertigo is fucking egregious. So, then you can start addressing that problem if you can eliminate the commentary problem, if we are ultimately concerned about the integrity of the game and not just the fan service, because some fans are complaining on Reddit that maybe the commentary isn't going to be in the language that they would prefer, so why would they travel to the venue, right? What do you think on the topic?
It's all right. I think as we covered that like a few episodes ago, so I say we just get into some other major topics. Let's just keep it rolling.
Sure. Yeah.
So what do you want to talk about next?
I guess that is a big one, a big discussion I think that needs to be had going forward with most TOs. All right, so we can get into some like general house. I mean, I guess it's worth mentioning actually. Let's go ahead and just touch on the G2 stuff real quick, because Xtaz and now Niak have both moved on, and there was a lot of like shock around Niak moving on for whatever reason, and I'm just like, dude, he's French through and through. Like, he has been on the French teams since pretty much the beginning of CS:GO, and I think even in Source, like he came up there. But I mean, he has basically been managing the premier French teams for as long as I can remember. And so when Xtaz decides to leave G2, I can't imagine being shocked that Niak would decide to go next, because look, Kenny isn't even on the active roster, so he's not playing. He's not French, and the rest of the team, there's no Frenchmen left for Niak to work with. So I think, Xtaz leaving, Niak leaving, they're probably talking to each other right now and figuring out, okay, which team do we go in France, and how do we, what do we do to rebuild the French scene, because clearly it needs it. And they're probably pretty flush after their time working for tier 1 tournaments, tier 1 team owners, right? So they've probably got some money put aside. They're probably not going to be like needing a tier 1 contract again anytime soon. So they could probably actually switch over to the French team and start rebuilding the French scene and focusing on that, or figuring out maybe some production stuff for the Paris Major that's coming up next year. I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff they could do in France. So it doesn't come as a big shock to me that these guys are bailing on the G2 project. What do you think of that news?
I mean, to me, first of all, I actually wonder on some level, is this anything to do with Carlos stepping back? Because obviously when he took over this particular squad in G2, it was when he made the French super team after he had Shoxy and Scream, then he made the big team, and then obviously they re-upped a few times. And even the lineup they had, basically, if people don't remember, they broke it half French when they brought in the crazy guys, Hunter, and then they had a Nexa, obviously. But the problem is, to me, that's why it's not a big surprise Niak's going. Because if people don't know, I don't really know what he does when his title's general manager. Because as far as I can tell, it's just the manager part. Like, if people don't know, Niak is just the manager. He was the guy who arranges the flights and helps the team. Maybe
he's not a GM. He's the manager.
If he knows the player like Kenny S, maybe he has like a heart to heart with them if they're having problems. Like, he's not like he wasn't the one going like, Alexi B is not for me. We're going to kick him. Like, which is in theory, if people don't know, that's what the term general manager means. If you're in American sports, etc., the idea would be he'd be doing what Carlos is supposed to have done, of like pick the players, decide which horse to go with, who I'm going to cut now. So it's not a surprise he goes, especially because it is definitely not a French org in any context. That's the part people miss. It's like Fnatic. It ain't a French organization. It isn't a Swedish org. They just had a tradition of Swedish players. And because they always had some good Swedish players, you may as well re-up with more Swedish players. But I noticed it made people think that like the org was Swedish. And so in the same way, people think who were CSGO fans that it's like almost like a French org or something. Well, obviously isn't, is it? Like the only connection was having that really good French team, which now is no one. Like, remember, there's just no one left in the team. It's irrelevant that they're French. But the bigger thing to me is the idea that that Pekka guy comes in, the guy who was working with like Relog and all that shit in Serbia with like and I think like there was some like tournament in Serbia that he was working with. And then he was the one who became like general manager of that FPX team that was in Flashpoint where they never fucking played. And then did get a lineup, but it was the one with Farley and Madden and fucking Devil Walk and those people, if you remember, Sticko. They had that lineup that online was like pretty decent, but it just never really got to the point where the lands came around. It was that good, and obviously they sold the players to these different teams. And basically the problem is that it's not that Niak's left. It's like, remember, keep the narratives clean, Semmler. Nico's never asked for anyone to be fired, anyone to be hired, or had any influence. But magically, a Serbian guy just became his general manager. Like, mate, at what point? Well, are we just going to have to wait till like Nico's uncle and fucking his kebab guy are just working in the org before we realize?
Joke is Quesada and Yanko. You get Quesada in there.
No, but it's already enough it's already enough that's a Serbian guy, mate, who already worked with Hunter before. Like, this is ridiculous now. This is just ridiculous. Because here's the problem. If these teams fail now, I've already seen people saying it, dude, because fans never give up on Nico. They're like, I think Nico and Hunter should really think about leaving this team. Are you having a fucking laugh? So they should bring in all their guys and then go, well, this team isn't good enough. Tell you what, I think I need to go to a better team. You made it shit. You brought in your guys. You think Carlos and all the guys from fucking Spain or wherever else G2's from are going, we got to have everyone from the Balkan regions who magically has a connection to Nico. Nico doesn't want it, of course. In fact, no one even knows what he wants. Apparently, Nico's like fucking certain people's conception of God, like deist or something. It's like, we know he exists and he did create the universe, but he's had no interaction since, and we don't really know his mind or what he wants. Like, fucking hell, mate. Pick up the phone, homie. Just do a call. So I don't buy the idea, obviously, that these people are just joining and magically they have nothing to do. And then also, you saw in the Xstars comments, what's the implication again? Oh, magically, are you ready, Semmler? Here's another thing Nico definitely doesn't want. Magically, his cousin might be his IGL now. You know, the guy who couldn't have Carrigan as his IGL and couldn't have MSL as his IGL and couldn't have Alexi B as his IGL, but could have Nexa also from Serbia. Well, you know what? You're not going to believe it, but his cousin can be his IGL. Never been an IGL account. No, it's because people are going to tell me you wasn't like tier 4. Like, I mean, at tier 1, obviously, idiot. So, like, mate, again, it's like, come on, man. Again, I've said this in the past. I can't tell if Nico's the unluckiest guy ever because he doesn't ask for anything and all these things seem to happen and then he gets blamed, or if he's the luckiest guy ever because he doesn't ask for anything and all the things he wants happen. It's like, dude, I can't tell which it is.
It's that one line from the Xstaz quotes, because these are quotes that we're referring to, these quotes from Xstaz that were from a stream of his where he was answering questions. He kind of did like an impromptu AMA, and one guy was kind enough to write these down, to take a little bit of a record of it. So very good, big shout out to him. But one of those lines was, I wasn't able to put in place my way of coaching. It's not the coach who drives G2.
Who is it then? No, notice they never tell you. Notice they never tell you, because you know why they go like, you do not speak against the Godfather. Like, give me a fucking break. The fucking bread father more. Like, that's what Nico is, because he just gets that fucking bread, controls the whole scene.
Also, he's got to be on one of the fattest contracts in CSGO. Why the fuck would he go anywhere else? He's going to
because he's all about them carbs. No one be so fat. He's getting that bread, not only in the salon, but in the fucking server too, homie. That's ridiculous, isn't it? I know. Come on, man.
Talks about, let me see.
Because you know what's weird? Have you noticed this? No one's made this connection before. I used to make the connection between Nico and Shocks for two reasons that actually aren't like directly, like the two reasons were this. One, they're just both amazing rifle players who like you want in your team. They could be the game changer. And then two, they both earlier in their careers did have that weird rep of like they sort of party a bit and maybe they're like a bit rock star, and also like you sort of, they're a bit divish. Maybe you have to do things their way in the team and make them happy. So they were actually quite similar in that regard. Because here's the third reason I never thought of back then though. Shocks is also an infamous problem child to have in teams where never seems to get along with an IGL for more than a year, does he? That's why famously, I mean, Nico himself did it, but Shocks used to just go, I'll be the IGL now. And that's how he would just cock you. He wouldn't just go and like toxic and just be like, we have to kick this guy. He'd just be like, maybe I should go now. Like, that they would just start doing that. So like, there's another connection. Like, I don't know why. There's nothing else really thematically between them, but they both just have this tortured career where if they're the superstar player, everything else seems to magically fall apart around them. The IGL, they don't seem to trust him anymore, have a relationship with him. Because that's one thing I was saying in this like video I'm going to put out tomorrow, this one about Nip and Alexi B, because I'm obviously trying to assess the Alexi B thing, what went wrong, etc.
Very interesting.
One thing I can't get is this, right? It's not that I think actually that Nico's doing like some Stewie 2K shit and being like, look, fuck off, dude. Like, don't talk to me. Like, you're just a coach or whatever. Like, bring me water. I don't think he's doing that. But I do get the vibe with Nico that unless it is his guy that is the IGL, like a friend of his, someone he like knows already, a like legend that he wants, unless it's that guy. Here's what I don't think Nico gets. This is just speculation, but I think it must be the case if you look at how these team relationships go and how it's not that people diss him when they leave. They just don't address what their relationship was like. They never mention it.
Okay.
Here's what I want to know. does Nico actually want to win? Because if you actually want to win, it ain't enough just to shoot heads. What you need to do now, if you're Nico, is each IGL, even if they fail, mate, even if they get kicked out in 6 months like Alexi B, you've got to go into it with the most good faith mindset ever of like, I'm going to give this a real try. And even if I don't agree with this style, I don't agree with this guy, maybe I didn't even agree with the signing, I'm going to try. So here's what you do if you're Nico. Dude, you're the first person to contact the IGL. And you go, you know what, mate, as soon as you get in and we get to the boot camp, let's me and you have a conversation. Here's who I am as a player. Here's who I am in my career. Like, I really want the major now. I'm super motivated for that. I'm not here to just get second places and that. I have a certain vision of how I want to play. I want to do these things in the mid-round. Give him the whole playbook, then have like a relationship, like, and then he can say to you, well, I sort of do things this way. And yeah, okay, maybe I can make a compromise for you. I feel like that doesn't happen. I feel like what happens is they just got told, like, here's your new IGL. And it's like, oh, hello, mate. It's like you start playing like, nah, I'm not really liking this. I didn't really, it's like, what is the relationship? Because I've never heard of them all having an awesome relationship.
I think that's why I got on board with the Alexi B joining G2 train, though, because there was those, it is one of those things, but it is what, like you say, right? That you hope that they're going to get off on the right foot and start moving in that path. But do you remember when they posted pictures of them partying together, like where there's like, yeah, we're at the club together, we get along really great and all that. And I was like, all right, well, if they get along socially, maybe that's going to translate into the game. They're going to have an understanding, a certain rapport, they're going to be able to actually, have a conversation and maybe get things done. It didn't really pan out that way, obviously. Now we know, but it did make me wonder if exactly what you describe now that you hope Nico is going to do in the future was happening then with Alexi B. Maybe that is a thing. I know this is all pure speculation. We're all here just trying to like psychoanalyze Nico or whatever, like how the bread works. How does the bread get made? But
no, but with good reasons though, Semmler, because here's the thing. Last year, you could make all the excuses because the team wasn't that good. This year, mate, they've had the pieces this year. These are even proven IGLs. He's sometimes getting like Alexi B, like in this, and he's got a coach, by the way, that guy in Vitality, everyone thought he was a miracle worker. That, by the way, that's an angle I go back to. I saw Richard made this point in his video. I don't buy it. I don't buy the whole Extaz angle. Here's why. Because the whole story with him, Semmler, is he's like the French Sonic. You bring him in and he has control. He controls the roster. He controls the practice. He has the system. If that's true, why does he join if he didn't get it? Because at the end, he's trying to do that shit where he's sort of like, I never really got to do my thing. What were you doing for the last 10 months? Because here's my problem. It was implied that it was him and Alexi B not seeing eye to eye. That meant Alexi B had to go. Well, if you were never getting what you were doing anyway with Huxies, what was going on in that fucking team, mate? That's something's off with that. You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
how do we ever find that out though? Like, historically, is there a way to find this out apart from
because the
like
problem is
all story? Like,
you only get his side.
Comes out 10 years from now.
No, you're only going to get his side because he's French and he's going to go on. He's already done it on his stream and he'll go on and they'll interview on one PV and sell it. But that'll just be his side, won't it? You'll never get to know
exactly.
That's it. By the way, that's the thing that's always pissed me off about Nico. You're all going to think it's just because you, Thorin, he doesn't like you. He doesn't like anyone. Who's he ever done really long interview with where he explains himself? Here's what you guys don't get, and I'll just say it once and for all. I'll tell you the reason I think he doesn't do an interview, guys. And he's not wrong, but it is why people will never fully fuck with him. I think he thinks, I don't have to do an interview, and how dare you think you should know my reasons? By the way, he's not wrong. He's not obliged to tell us. But I'll tell you right now, my dude, if you don't control the narrative at all, someone else will. And that might be me, that might be fans, that might be Reddit or HLTV. But the point is they will control the narrative. And then if you don't like the way it's going, it can get even worse. If you at least participate a bit, you can steer it a bit. You can have some say. By the way, if you come up with a great angle, just look what Config did. Config's an idiot, so he fucked it up. But the first twit longer before we examined it properly, that was initially doing work, dude. People were like feeling really sorry, like, oh, actually, like, oh, he could have died and everything. They didn't realize stuff like, wait a minute, he was trying to kick the other guy and he followed it. It wasn't until people sort of did the like, wait a minute. But initially that was working. Like, dude, if Nico just did, it doesn't have to be with me, doesn't even have to be Richard, couldn't be with anyone. He could go and do an interview with fucking Nell. They speak English. Just do like your own version, not a tell-all, but just tell your side of the story. Craft it however you want. Because I guarantee it'll have an impact. Like, I know this because I did this with Alu myself. Remember, Alu came out of that edge shit really badly because all those players at the end turned against him and basically implied like he was the problem. But when he did his reflections interview with me, he came off way better because first of all, he did stuff like he copped to things that maybe were his problem and things he didn't understand about the team and regrets he had. And then things that weren't always his fault. Like, and then when you give like the balanced, your explanation version, it plays really well with fans. Fans can tell if you're authentic, dude. Authenticity Look, it can go against you
Especially in this day and
sometimes, but I think, it connects with people and they realize, oh, this isn't just a PR. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe I'll listen to this.
For it.
Maybe I'll listen to it.
That was, I mean, if we want to take it that way, that was the undoing of Carlos at the G2. They could tell that, they're like, blink twice if the PR guy's holding the gun to your head when you're writing these tweet apologies. It's like they are all, people know they can read the PR language now. And so if you get the PR language, they can write you off and say, okay, whatever, he's just doing the PR thing. But if you're actually out there writing something heartfelt or something legit, people definitely, they crave that sort of thing now, I think, because they are so just, surrounded constantly by fake, the veneer. But you really do hope that that at some point the story is going to come out, like just what is going on, because now the thing is that Nico started to lean into the memes. He started to lean into the narrative. I mean, it was funny. Kenny overacted the shit out of it. It was great. Kenny had me cracking up. But that Halloween meme that G2 put out, the little video of them making Dr. Frankenstein's monster, and Kenny's there being the hunchback, helping him out, and then Hooksy sitting in the corner. I mean, that was a funny meme, but at the same time, it means that Nico's leaning into it. All right, what do you got?
Is he leaning into it, or is someone with like a crook pushing his back, like, go forwards? Because that's the problem. Pull that back up again, Semmler. And I'm not going to go full, like, whatever his name was, Tim, I can't remember, is it Roth or whatever the fuck, in that, like, Lie to Me. You remember that show where it was like he could see like micro emotions or whatever? It was only did like a season of it or something. It was a decent premise.
Right. That's
basically, I'm not going to do that, but there is sort of a bit of that with Nico, which is all I'll say is this. Go and look at all the funny material they've made since he's been in G2. What you can't sell, and again, I'll do another one, True Romance. You remember the Christopher Walken character who has that speech about how the face is like a pantomime and it has all these different things.
One of the best scenes in
has all these different things that they give away. It doesn't matter what you say, your face will give away how you feel and what you're thinking. It's like that with Nico, because the problem is he's saying the joke that's funny. He's trying to do but like the eyes, watch the eyes. It's like the face is fake. The eyes are always just dead. Like, I'm not enjoying this. It's like, they've told me to do this and they say it's funny and I'll do it and I'll say the things you said. Ha, I'm enjoying this. Good job, Kenny. But I hate this. It's like he always has that thing. And the reason I don't get it is this. It's one thing I've never understood about Nico, by the way. He just is someone who is he's just a whiny fuck, isn't he? He's just got that element to his personality. And the reason it's so weird is go on his Instagram and see when he's with his girlfriend. Go and see, like you're saying, when he's in a club with Janko and Casad, or when he's with some of his teammates. Dude, that's when he's having real fun. Those are genuine smiles. He's actually vibing then. Those are the people he likes. But I almost feel like this guy should have been a 1v1 StarCraft player or Quake player, mate. A game that is not a team game. Because when I see him in team environment, like, it's like the same in the match. He is the guy where it's like, I bought a Galileo accent. Like, not literally, but, he just rages off everything, doesn't he? Like, something about that. Like, I wouldn't vibe with a teammate like that, I've got to say. No matter how good you are. It just sort of sours the mood a bit,
Could be. I mean, it could be that's it's a personality thing, and that's what's causing all of these friction. I
mean, it seems to be because he's made himself. Here's also how he's wrecked himself. You could just give him a credit, right, Semmler, because there's barely any people from Balkan region at the top level. You could go, well, it's a different region. Maybe their passion's different. No, he literally recruited his own cousin, the most chill, cool guy of all time, who's like 80% as skilled as him, but with none of these attitude problems. And who just is smiling like, yeah, thanks. I mean, I'll try better next time, and I hope to have a good game. And it's like, bro, it's like you did you got the actual control group to show you're just a wanker. Like... It would be like if I had a twin, but he was just some really polite guy. Like, well, I mean, I would never call him an idiot. I would just say I disagreed with his perspective, sir. Then I'd look like a total arsehole now, as instead, seem cool, don't I? Nah, I overplayed that, obviously.
You're onto something here. You're onto something. It's the Balkan connection. Well, I mean, it's like it's not done yet. We're still going to be seeing the G2 saga continue because they still have to find a coach, and I'm still not, dude. You say it jokingly. You can say it jokingly where it's just like Casad or Yanko, but at this point, who else you got? I mean, G2 could legitimately bring in Casad and then just let it run. Let him rip with Nico, and let's see if maybe it's a regional thing and maybe Casad can get through to him and actually get the results.
I mean, if you look at those videos I did with Casad, especially the one on coaching, first of all, it is just really good content, like very interesting ideas. Basically, he wants like an American sports approach where you have a whole team and the way you do things. And he even wants like, he had some brilliant ideas, by the way, from sports about how you do contracts. I'll give you a taster like this. You know, when they did the Mondesi deal, where they just straight up paid $600K for a player that had done nothing. right? His logic is, first of all, terrible deal, because who are you bidding against? Like, you've just overpaid there. That deal should probably be like 300K. But even if it has to be 500 or 600K, Semmler, here's how Cassard suggests you do it. You don't just pay the 600K up front and then find the team's bust and go, sorry, guys, spent all the budget. You go like, right, I'll tell you what, since he's a young player, 200K cash, and then I'll give you like 5% prize money for the next 2 majors, and then you get 100K in 2 years if he's like a top 20 player. You do like a bonus system and incentive system. And what you're doing there, that's genius, is you only need 200K to start with. You pay the rest years later. You've now got money, by the way, if you have to do what they've done now twice, which is buy a new set of players in. Keep buying more players, because that's what you have to do with a super team. So already they fail in that sense. But then the other thing that he wants to do is like, have all different like team structure. So the joke is, if I was other teams, I'd be listening to this video. But it's also a great advertisement that, like, if you hire me, Cassard, I will do all of these things I am talking about. This is what I want to do as a coach or a general manager or esports director or whatever the fuck it would be. By the way, he also got one of the slams of all time off on Twitter. I'll just say, because we're on the topic of Cassard, where what happened was when EG went out, he made some sort of comment about, like, about how evil geniuses would come and make some like stupid comment about how they're going to fix it and shit. Because if people don't know, I'm going to do a video about this soon after the major. EG pissed off not only Malek and fucking Stewie and Evie and all these people, but they dicked around Cassard for months and months, having him do interview after interview. And dude, he was doing like interviews with nobodies, like people who aren't even from CSGO. And they were doing all this shit. And at the end, they were sort of like, right. And they were telling him the whole time, like, it's really, this could really work out. And then at the end, they were just like, thanks, but no thanks. Like, we'll call you, don't call us. And then just fucking left him like, like sitting by a phone that never rang. So because he just had the audacity, Semmler, to suggest like, well, they'll probably just come out now and say a bunch of fake stuff. The director of performance of EG came and tried to clap him and actually do like what that fucking journalist did to you. Just reveal some private shit for a conversation.
I'll read it to you. So GamerDoc @GamerDoc_. Wow. Seems like your overwhelming enthusiasm about our program has waned in only a few months, but I suppose people say anything in interviews. And
but
so
that's insane because
back.
One, you have literally just essentially violated the privacy of that interview. And then two, it's also dumb as fuck, by the way, because no one else put 2 and 2 together. Yeah, he was enthusiastic months and months ago when he thought he could run the org and change it. Now that he knows you're a bunch of dog shit morons who did nothing and have fucked the whole team away and spent all this money, he isn't very enthusiastic. But then read out Cassard's reply, because here's where I admire Cassard. I'm bad at this, Semmler. When I do it on Twitter, I react emotionally and I just tell someone like, you're an idiot or something. He actually did like a classy fucking slam. Give me the slam. Come on.
All right, here we go. So his answer to that is, you would know about that. Instead of replying to my tweets, maybe you should focus on helping your team with performance director.
Now, the reason that's
she
genius,
is the director of performance.
Literally, that's literally. By the way, can you imagine the fucking gall of some people? Your job is director of performance. Your team has utterly failed with every form of roster it has had. And then you're going like, you don't seem enthusiastic about my dog shit team that's underperforming. And also, the reason I loved it, I even linked it there, is because it's like that moment from Rogue One, isn't it? Where that guy is getting choked by Vader and then he goes, don't choke on your aspirations, director. It's like, exactly. And he even nailed the fucking director at the end. It was fire. That's fire in the booth right there. That was fucking sick, mate. Because like I say, it was almost classy the way he did it, even though he was absolutely, by the way, spitting in your face. He did it in like a funny and classy way where like you seem like the asshole if you don't sort of laugh along with it, don't you? That's how you do a takedown. I actually admire that.
That was just one of the highlights of the week. I think was just that tweet repartee, because the EG people, man, like whatever culture they've got going on over in that team right now with the management and everything.
Just wait. You can't even imagine what a clown show is. So like, I won't even leak any details because I need you to get it all at once in the download, because I've got everything from everyone at all levels. And as a result, when you find out the level of clownery, I'm talking about like people they've hired, where they came from, like people they've put in charge, what they've told the other people. When you get a competent person, how you deal with them, who they go under, it's mental when you see the structure, mate. It's so nuts. Like some of it's actually like, it could be like in a parody movie about esports. No. Like, put it this way, I'll give you one little hint. All I'll tell you is this. Have you ever heard that like famous anecdote from Hollywood that when Barbara Streisand was like a huge movie actress and she was like the shit with a big celebrity and stuff, supposedly she had so much pull that the guy who was her fucking hairdresser became like a movie producer thanks to her like putting him in movies and giving him like fucking roles and be like, you have to be my producer now. Like, that's the sort of level of shit you will all find out was going on in Evil Geniuses. Like, I don't want to leak anymore because I don't want to give the joke away in the punchlines, but like, it's amazing, mate. Just wait until this major's over.
I can't wait. You're doing a video on this?
I've already got all the info, but here's the thing. I can't go into why, but I literally, because I'm not a piece of shit like the Evil Geniuses stuff, I actually didn't release my video now during the major because it could literally, you'll find out why, have actually put one of their players in real danger. So I purposely am waiting till they're fully home, the major's over, and then I'll drop it all. You'll find out why. That's a pretty telling angle in itself, right? But you'll find out what I mean by that.
Oh, I
You'll
love
find
it.
out what I mean.
I love it. I can't wait now. So what? We got a week, a little, like 10 days. 10 days or so. Good. Well, then, something to mark your calendars. Be sure to look forward to that, guys. I'm going to be looking forward to it. That's going to be good stuff. I just love their antics on social media. It's painful shit. So, all right, good. We got that.
Semmler. That has nothing to do with this betting segment, but it was a weird thing to say that got your attention, didn't it? Now that I've got your attention, esports bets still run their classic first-time crypto deposit of 50% on up to 200 USDT. Now let's get back to the show.
I love it. What else have we got here that we were I mean, the thing is like that was the G2 topic. I mean, I'm just trying to think if we had anything else. Yeah, we did. Because we're gonna have to loop back into the major because obviously this is a lot of major news this week and there's just so much to it. So we kind of jumped the gun jumping straight into the major. But there was this bit of news that came out that I found pretty interesting and that and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. But Vitality take a pay cut across the board in order to afford bringing Spinx onto the team. So I don't know if you caught that bit of news. But when Spinx came into the roster, that was apparently Vitality did not have the budget to make it work to be able to pay Spinx the competitive salary that ENCE apparently were going to pay him. Because what I have heard is that ENCE were in the negotiations that ENCE were willing to go up to 20,000 a month in terms of salary for Spinx to keep him on ENCE. And apparently Vitality didn't have the money to make that happen to be competitive. And so they asked for the team to take the hit and to take a reduction on their salary so that they could then have the money in order to pay Spinx his salary. And so right now, I mean, okay, already that's interesting because it's not the first time that we've heard of teams, taking that hit, players taking that hit before to get other teammates on, to take the hit salary wise to make it to get the team that they wanted. But talk about I mean, to me that would be a pretty high pressure sort of situation for Spinx, because if you're ever fucking up in the server, you're literally thinking to yourself, I took these guys as bread to be on this team, and here I am dicking around, like just an extra level of tilt possible, because you could be holding yourself a little bit accountable considering you're actually costing these guys money being here. So I don't know. That was one angle where we're just like, holy shit, okay. But what's your take on this one?
I mean, to me, this is the same problem G2's having, which is when you spend money for what you think is a super team, it has to work because you've spent the money. You can't just go, oh, sorry, can we have another try? It's like the money's gone, mate. You don't get the buyout back. You can't return a player and go, can I have the money back, please? It was a mistake. Like it's not like a pair of fucking trainers or something, mate. So the problem is they're trying, just like G2 did, to make a second super team. In this case, just one player. They're not adding two like they added with Huxley and JKS. They're just adding Spinx, right? But as you say, he's the star player of ENCE. And listen, ENCE isn't the biggest org, but I'll bet like you can get like if you saw the results they were having, you could maybe even sell a sponsor on that. Like, look, if we keep this guy, we'd need the budget to keep him, but if we keep him, we might be top 4 in the world and we'll be in like the major semis and we'll get the sticker. You could maybe like pitch that as like a way to keep them around. Like I've heard, for example, that's the reason I made a whole video series about it. That's the reason why Fallen lied publicly and claimed he never wanted to go to SK Gaming. He wanted to stay in Luminosity, was because supposedly last minute, the Luminosity guy who used to be paying him way less, well, when they came with the big SK offer, the Luminosity guy quickly like scrambled and was like, I've got a huge sponsor. And they say that if you all sign, they'll match the SK offer. So then Fallen was like, and then he was going to stay, right? So that does happen. That is a way that things work. Like these guys don't just sign the deals like without knowing the team or without knowing any of your expectations. But the other thing I would say is this is actually mad dodgy in my opinion in terms of like where they spent the money. Because let's face it, if they had to break the bank anyway, you've got to assume it was at the beginning of the year signing the trio from Astralis, the package deal. Magus, Dupree, and Zonic. You know they must be getting the bag because in theory they gave the bag at Astralis to Glaive and Zipnik, so I'm sure they were at least willing to counter and maybe give something good. And I heard there was multiple teams interested in those guys. So I'm guessing you broke the bank there, right? So then you come to this point and you want Spinx to make your team do what it does now, have a chance to win the major. You want to finally realize the potential. And in a way, you're hoping it's not throwing good money after bad. You're hoping actually it's the money that makes the rest of it all worth it. Now you'll look like a genius that you signed the 3 from Denmark. But here's my problem, Semmler, right? Not only does that mean you were playing effectively like Dupree, probably the worst player on the team, loads of money, which is a problem because now your star player you don't have money for. But even more so, if you know multiple things about the Vitality org outside of the League CSGO, then it's really dodgy because this was the year in League of Legends that they made a super team, Semmler. They bought Perks from Cloud9 for millions, I've heard, an enormous signing. They got Alfari from Team Liquid. Also, I don't know if he was a free agent or if it was, I think it was maybe sold. Another player must cost, by the way, his salary must be enormous, remember. League of Legends players get paid more than CSGO. And then they also got this guy, Kazi, who'd been the AD carry. He wasn't like the best, but he was the AD carry of the Mad Lions team that had won the championship the previous year twice. So they made like on paper a super team. And then they had like, that must have cost some money. So there's the other thing. If you're Vitality, this is why I made that point about the guys in CSGO. That's why I'd be pissed. It's like, where are you spending this money? So you're spending millions and millions on an LAC team, which by the way failed. It didn't make it Worlds and it did absolutely nothing. It never had anywhere close to a playoff run to like deep or whatever. You spend millions on them and then your CSGO team, which is that far from being to the top, you haven't got any money left for. Like, that's just an organizational failure at that point in time. Like, you just haven't picked the right horses to back. You've sort of overspent on one and then thought, well, I've already taken care of the CSGO one. No, in CSGO, you have to re-up a few times, it turns out.
That is, and also Zywoo has to be on a pretty solid deal himself. So
he has like a 5-year deal, remember?
Going towards him, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, no, that's actually, I was unaware of the what was going on in League of Legends. That makes a lot of sense, though, as to why they're saying, well, they're scraping.
Makes sense to don't have any cash, yeah.
Yeah, that's where all the cash could have gone. Okay, then. I mean, it's interesting. It's just from the perspective. I mean, it's just that information being out there. I just thought about it like from a Spinx perspective, where if he's missing shots, if he's fucking up, if he's not performing, which he hasn't really been bringing that star level performance that you're kind of hoping for, which is kind of why Vitality have looked a little sluggish in this first round of the majors. Had he been hitting on all cylinders, it could have been a different story for Vitality. But
well, the joke is, here's the joke if you've been watching the major. Turns out the only 20Ks that Spinx gets is his monthly salary.
Hey,
see what I mean there? See what I did there? Hey. It was all right. I wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
There you go. It's true though, man. It's brutal.
Yeah, he's had some pretty bad games. Absent. He had some like 13 frag games or whatever.
Yeah, he's been absent. It's been just freaking. Yeah. I mean, dude, and even Zywoo's had some quiet maps. It's been really weird watching. Although Zywoo, you know, individually he's hard to put down. He bounces back, but it's like just Zywoo. And the problem is that you can't play Counter-Strike like that anymore. Like you can't just have one guy who does it all. You need to have some help. Even Simple needed some help. So it's not that's not what's going to make it. All right. So one other topic that I wanted to just touch on real quick, and it was kind of like follow up on last week because the article, the third Iron Carton article came out right as we went live with By the Numbers last week. And so this was the third one written by Richard Lewis on Deserto on the match fixing scandal that was ESIC. And it's just touching on it, but managed to read that article now, which again is in the same vein as the first two articles, where Richard Lewis is talking about this guy who's come out allegedly with all this information about match fixing, all these scandals, and he's worked with ESIC, and he left ESIC because ESIC were ineffective and they weren't willing to go forward and pull the trigger and actually, you know, execute some of the cases, you know, that he brought to them. And so he went rogue and left ESIC and started saying, you know, just started blasting these players and these teams, claiming that he himself had organized fixes in the past, and that's why he had access to this network and why he had access to this information. And you know, he's in, and it's all about him, and he wants to bring justice. So that about sums it up. TLDR. That about sums up the situation. And so Richard writes this article because one of the players that he called out and also claims that he could call this player out because he was the one who he himself paid the player.
I love that
money
part.
for the fix.
It's so good, isn't it? I know.
Fucking mad.
Listen,
mad
you can trust
story.
me because I was doing the crime with him.
Exactly. Just the maddest
What are you
story.
talking about? I know it's so stupid, isn't it? I know.
So already you got to wonder what this guy's on. But so Richard, diligent as he is, he just goes into it and he starts trying to actually get some evidence out of this one. And so he decides to follow up on the wonderful story.
To be fair, I think I know why the guy might not want to give evidence. It's like, here is the evidence to incriminate me and put me in jail. That's why he's saying to Richard, like, I think you should stop, wanting so much evidence.
And I love the part where
know.
he finally claims to pass some evidence along, and Richard points out that and it was heavily cropped, so you couldn't really see where the transfer was coming from, like who was the transfer to.
It was like one of those things where the CIA like redacts the document.
Yeah.
See almost
it's all
nothing,
black
like,
bars.
what the fuck's this? I know exactly.
No, it's not the Pfizer contract to the EU. It is just Richard doing some bang up journalism. So the reason why this came like this hopped back onto my radar was because we missed that article. So we went back and read that article. Terrific work by Richard, of course. It clears up the situation. It makes it really seem like this guy's a little bit ropey. It doesn't quite have all of the evidence necessary to convict. And that's where you leave off. So I highly recommend reading the article because Richard, really lays it out for you. But also the reason why I bounced on is, again, Team Spirit themselves have said that they themselves are executing their own. They're working in cooperation. They're cooperating with these things, but that they themselves are doing an investigation on Wonderful now to see if Wonderful actually has anything to it.
Here's my problem, Semmler. Let me just hit that straight away because everyone else is so naive. Because this is just what esports is, by the way. In esports, Riot goes, we'll do our own investigation to find out whether we're guilty of being pieces of shit. We just found out we weren't. And everyone goes, they found out the results come.
There we go, that's settled.
How dumb are you guys? And also in this scenario, everyone else might be confident about, at least Team Spirit's looking into it, right? You do realize it's in their best interest not to reveal that their player was match fixing and cheating, and their player that now is at the major didn't match fix. That's absolutely in their best interest. And before you go, whoa, Thorin, a bit xenophobic in here. What the hell? Maybe they just care about the truth, right? I'll tell you a little something about CIS audits, guys, right? Na'Vi, we already talked about the story where they're just refusing to acknowledge an obvious conflict of interest by just being like, look, maybe the owner of Na'Vi is also the owner of that other company. But that company doesn't own us. It's like, what the fuck misdirection is that? No one was even saying that. So there's Na'Vi for you, by the way, the Premier org. Then let's go through some other orgs. Akuma, they were the ones, as far as I can tell, just cheating in an RMR for a major. Then let's go one more. People are going to forget this one. How about Force? Just before or around Flashpoint 2, there was that story where Yanko himself came out and said, Force is mad. Because remember, they had LMBT or some coach that had got accused of using the bug, right? And when that whole drama was coming out, I remember Yanko on Twitter saying, by the way, they're literally a team that used to be famous among tier 1 European squads, that if you join their server, they do that whack shit where there's the guy's pretending he's a bot and it's just a coach and he's just recording the fucking your strats, watching from the spectator people. And he said, we just learned eventually if we join and we see that, we just demand it gets kicked and then we play the game. And they were just notorious for this. So all I'm saying is in that part of the world, just as that with certain criminal corruption elements, they just seem a lot more loose with competitive integrity. As far as I can tell, if you can't get caught and punished, some people just do it. Not everyone, but some people certainly do. So I'm just very suspicious of that whole region in that sense. So I don't really give a fuck that they're doing an investigation. What do you think they're going to find? Probably nothing, I imagine.
Well, this whole story is in that trend where the guy himself is his whole claim to fame is that he's the one who's rigging the games. You're just like, dude, what are you doing? It really does make you wonder, what kind of evidence is he going to put forward?
Yeah, here's the weird thing I don't get.
Why this isn't going anywhere.
Here's the thing I really don't get, right? Remember, the whole premise before he mentions he rigs the game, Semmler, is that, ESIC's not doing enough about stopping rigging and match fixing, and he really cares about it. Yes. Crazy idea, my dude. I know one person match fixing that you can stop immediately. You fucking cunt. Why don't you stop it? Why are you saying you care about stopping it? You're the one doing it. You're going, it's outrageous. You won't believe this player was doing it. Well, can I see some evidence? You don't need it. I was the one doing it with him. And stop. Just stop doing it. I don't know. Am I missing something? Why is no one hit that point? That one seems just obvious. That just comes ready-made, doesn't it? Can you at least stop? It's nah. Why would I? Money's great. I know. What the fuck's the premise? It's so stupid. I don't understand that.
It
part
really
at
is a
all.
cloud
I
world.
know.
Like, what is
It's so
going on?
stupid.
Why are we here right now? I just now and it's like I want to see the conclusion to this story, but I feel like the 3 articles is all we're gonna get, because I don't think that there's gonna be anything more.
No,
to
there's
this.
nothing more. I don't think.
It's gonna fade away when the guy realizes that he can't actually give any evidence without incriminating himself. So whatever. It was funny while it lasted. It doesn't seem like it's gonna. Well, hopefully, it doesn't seem like it's gonna affect Wonderful's performance. I mean, if the situation is as it is right now, hopefully he's just gonna show up. And he's gonna bang some heads. Spirit, I think they're gonna be an interesting team to watch in the next phase. So on that note, let's actually go ahead. I mean, there hasn't just been at the ESL. There's been a whole bunch of other stuff going on. So you actually included some tweets actually that you wanted to touch on. The welcome notes provided by ESL for the players.
I'm a notorious hater of this, because if people don't know, as far as I know, Semmler, I believe the people who actually started this meta was Blast. Because if you remember, the first Blast, if people don't know, because initially they just hired loads of talent and they wanted to impress all the teams and the players and the talent rather, what they did was they did stuff like got you an extra nice hotel room and they gave you like a gift bag and all backpack.
Yeah, they gave you
stuff.
hoodies.
Yeah,
and
like and they get even like some, like coming and giving you like all the fucking drinks and sweets and then telling you all. And I think they did the same thing. I think they did a letter like, "Wow, we're so glad to have you here and we can't wait to see what you're going to do." So then ESL a few years back started doing this, right, for all their big events, kind of Itse, Cologne, and it became a trend that the players love it so much they take a picture and then they put it on, and then if it's a funny one, it gets put on Reddit, right? But the problem is Reddit are idiots, so they always lap it up like, "Wow, brilliant, yeah, it's so great that they care about them." First things first, I'll just say it immediately. If you tell every single team that they're all brilliant, they all deserve to be there, they can win, then no one can do that. You're just dishonest and two-faced. Like, who's writing these? Fucking Fallen. Like, this is ridiculous, mate. Like, everyone can't be awesome and you're pulling from them and you're all going to prove everyone wrong. All 16 of you, joint 16th players. What are you talking about? So that already is nonsense. And then secondly, the most disingenuous part is this, Semmler. Who's writing that letter? If I sent you a letter, right, I don't say who it's from, and it just goes, "Semmler, you're a guy who needs to prove everyone wrong, but you're going to because I believe in you. And I think you quite, but at the end, I don't sign it by anyone." What the fuck's that? Who are you? Who are you to know about me? So the maddest thing is, it isn't signed Carmack or, I don't know, fucking Apollo or whoever that flying DJ, whoever it is that in theory you would want to, because as far as I can tell, spoiler, I imagine it's some fucking intern, some staff member who's just the talent manager or whatever. So already the lovely things they say don't mean a lot because it's not really from anyone. It's just like ESL. It's like that shit again, dude, where companies are like demons wearing like the face of like a thing. "I'm here just to, I really think you can do it, heroic." You are actually a person saying, "Almost legally in the eyes of the law, I am." Like, this is fucking disturbing, isn't it? It's like, yeah, it's fucking disturbing, mate. That's some creepy ass shit. So there's already that. And then just this one in particular, my favorite ones are the ones where there's just absolute clownery inside the letter. So I'll tell you a classic one back in the day. A few years ago, Semmler, there actually was one for real, where it might have been last year at kind of Itse, the online one, right? Where when Virtus Pro, are you ready? This is amazing. Because remember, here's what I hate as well. I think some of these letters aren't written by somebody who really cares about the game and knows these players and knows that they go. And here's how I know, because this is real. One year, someone wrote one of those letters to Virtus Pro, and you know where it's the guy, Adren. I can't remember if it was which way around. It was either Team Look or Adren. They got the Adren wrong. They looked up the wrong Adren and they put that on the other team. And they were like, and of course, Adren, like, you know, I can't remember if it was Eric or the Kazakhstani one. They got it the wrong way around, showing that it's a totally fucking just fraudulent, like hollow gesture that you're saying. And then this heroic one is amazing though, guys. Because I'll just read a bit of it out. It is so beyond the pale that some nobody's
so
fighting
good.
this. And also, which team you're doing it to. Remember, I'll just point some details up for you guys. Heroic has never even appeared in a tier 1 LAN final. They've actually repeatedly failed themselves, their fans, their potential. Remember, after the online era, this was a team that should have been winning tournaments. They could have won that major. Like everyone thought it's really, and then in the last few months, they're not just being unfairly criticized. They've dropped off. They're not as good. They don't make the deep runs. They're not a real threat to win a tournament. And at this major, quite frankly, for me, it's this major or bust. If they're trash here, I just don't expect them to never do anything. So here's what the ESL thing says. I won't read the whole thing. I'll just skip down. And it goes, this is mad. It just goes, make the most of it and have a blast doing it. You are easily good enough to win this. The major! What the? Who the fuck are you, some intern guy, telling a team that, spoiler, is borderline probably to make playoffs, that they are easily good enough to win the What the fuck? Why are you doing that? Like, how much smoke are you going to, like, here's the thing, Semmler, you know that term, blowing smoke up someone's ass? They're doing, like, that full vape thing before with it, like, I bet fucking Katie, all eyes comes out. I could win this whole thing. Give me a break. Like, why are you telling them that?
Dude, just to play into the other one, the second paragraph is also mega when it comes to heroic, because just what you just said, right? About how, everybody expected them to do well.
By the way, in a way, you can read that as a diss as well. It's like they said that heroic shit on LAN. Not even the same team, are you? Bunch of bitches. But you proved them wrong. How did they prove anyone wrong, by the way? Like, they were worse on LAN. They were like winning Pro League, you idiot. That's an ESL tournament, I know. And then it goes, they said you were struggling since the recent move. By the way, I've just arrived at the major, right? Guys, positive mindset, boot camp went great.
I know.
Let's just read this letter. Everyone says you're shit. You won't win the major. And you've been struggling recently. But it's all right. I, anonymous ESL intern, I think you're easily good enough to win. And if you don't, you're shit. And by the way, I put all my skins on you. I mean, what is this letter? It's mental, isn't it? I know. It's so mental, I know. It's so mental. It's so bad, dude. I know. That's why you just got to turn the filter to humor and just enjoy it. It's just pure ESL clownery again.
I know, maybe like this is the thing. The whole event is corrupt through and through. It's actually
I know, exactly.
He's got bets going on all the teams, so it's like mental warfare. Oh,
mate, imagine if some of his other letters are like, at the last major, a lot of people put money on you in the semifinals and you betrayed them and let them down. But I know that when they bet on you in the quarterfinals, you will win map one this time. You fucking, and it's just crossed out like you Paul. What the fuck is that? I know. Because I hadn't even thought of that angle, by the way. That actually just reads like a list of all disses people. Here's what Reddit user 447 Bob said. Fuck heroic, Cadian should be killed. We don't believe him though. We believe you should live, Cadian. Like, what is this fucking angle? I know.
Funny that he's in he lives in Brazil. Well, maybe he'll be here at the event.
Oh, did you like my joke about that? I thought I had another good zinger, which is when ESL had that thing where they were like, look, we've removed a fan from the arena because he was making like threatening gestures, like throat slashing. And then my joke was, that's like just removing a guy from a diner for being mildly overweight and eating too much fast food. It's like, homie, how is that like finding like a needle in a haystack? Well, how did you find the obnoxious Brazilian fan threatening to kill everyone? What did you do? Read my Twitter or something? Give me a fucking break. And geolocate where he is. Like, it's the tweet's coming from inside the venue, Semmler. I can't handle it. It's so
CSI crime investigation. I just wonder if he was sitting next to Carmack or something. Carmack happened to spot him, and it's just his ill luck, that all panned out. Because seriously, like, dude, I still can't get over the fact that we are applauding the fans when they literally flick players off, are given like full birds.
Dude, it's the one.
All the fans.
You know the one I hate as well.
Like,
you might not know this, but it's a famous thing that people do when they know that their foreign language isn't a common one. So Russian is an example. They did it with that. Obviously Portuguese, Polish. Like not many people, not Polish, right? What they do is this: when the crowd does do some fucked up shit, they always lie and gaslight you that like, oh, that's not what that means. Actually, that's like a mistranslation. Yeah. What we actually were saying was like, hey, we hope you lose the round, but have a good game anyway. See ya. And it's like, then you just like cut the actual translation. It's like, take it up the ass, you. Like, are you for real? Because this happened, by the way, in loads of cases where they always, because the other one that kills me about that, Semmler, is you have to absolutely be gaslit to believe that, because you have to not have ever watched the UFC. In the UFC, by the way, I have watched UFCs where not only did they chant like, you are going to die to the person fighting, but literally one time an American guy won a fight and even tried to be magnanimous on the mic, and they all chanted something. And when I looked on Reddit and looked up, like, what were they saying? Some guy from Brazil, because remember, they don't have to gaslight you in UFC. They can just say like, fuck it, it's like a war culture, isn't it? They just said on Reddit, they were essentially calling him like a slur for gay people. The whole stadium, because he won this fight, just cheering that, shouting that, their version of that word. Mm-hmm. Some 23+1 shit, exactly. So like, why do we have to keep doing that? Because that's the thing I can't handle, Semmler. How can this be the same world that me and you were stuck in at the end of last year? The woke world. We're in a woke world, Semmler, where we're supposed to, remember all that, I could never work with people who kill my friends and stuff. The joke that these entire stadium is doing is you take it up the arse and you're a man. What is the implication? It's like what I said to KNG. By the way, you know, I have never tried to cancel KNG for that comment he said to me. What I tried to point out to him was, mate, you're cancelling yourself. They're not going to take it that way. They're going to see that your punchline is, I'm gay, and that's the joke, that would be a bad thing. That's the entire mechanism of your joke. It's the same thing here. The mechanism of your joke is, if you take it up the arse, you're like a lesser human or something. That's nothing to do with my opinions. That's the joke the crowd is making. And not only is everyone not addressing that at all, Semmler, like no one's coming out and going, listen, guys, cheer all you want and say what you like, but don't say stuff like that. Like, you know, we're on camera now, like millions of listeners. Not only did they not do that as far as I can tell, but even worse, every one of the talent is saying this crowd is amazing.
Yeah.
All I'm going to say is this, Semmler. Imagine this little thought experiment. Take the same fan saying the same thing, translate it into English culturally, have him have like overalls, like maybe like a baseball cap, beer in his hand. He's from Oklahoma, Tennessee or somewhere. Have him say the same thing. What do you think the talent say? What do you think the esports world says? What do you think ESL would do? By the way, that would be like international news. The whole event gets cancelled. Like it would be treated as though it was like hate crime. Oh, it would be outrageous. It wouldn't be treated as some fun thing.
In the West because it doesn't exist. What happens?
I mean, I've never seen that happen en masse.
Yeah, in the stadium shouting "fuck the Mormons" or something along those lines, because it's fine to say "fuck the Mormons," but you know, like all of those scandals that happen in the college of sports, you know, where they're called the N-word or whatever. It's like, yeah, that never happened. Actually, there's no footage of it. There's nobody knows.
There have been some bullshit ones for sure.
All manufactured, and then pushed on mainstream media. The thing is, like, you can't hold any of this because it would involve them having principles and them actually being consistent, and they have neither of those. So you don't even try. I mean, I did like his comments though, where, you know, there's a couple of excerpts for here in the article where it's like, they got it wrong. This is the guy who got yeeted out, by the way.
Come on.
They got it wrong. Apparently it was the Reaper's gesture that made me be taken away from the major. The guy took it with malice. They didn't understand it was a joke. If you ask me now, I will say that I regret it because I was expelled, but I would continue. Fuck yes. A little less for sure. I would continue to support Brazil.
Here's the one thing I can't handle, Semmler. I've always said this about Brazilian fans. They aren't who they pretend to be. They pretend to be this person, Semmler, who's like, oh, I love edgy banter, love jokes. It's all just jokes. They're the ones who used to brag, we're from the favelas and we'll fuck you up. Like that was like, we're the tough guys, right? But if you say, well, you're from the favela, how dare you? How dare you make that comment? And then if you say something to them, it could be the mildest joke ever. Oh, how dare you? You must hate us. Xenophobia. But in this scenario, you can just say that. Like, which is it? Are you saying everyone should die, or is no one allowed to make jokes at you? It's one or the other, surely.
Well, you know, we'll never understand the plight of the Brazilian, you know, according to Gaules.
Give me a break.
You know, it's just nobody on earth could possibly understand what it is to be Brazilian. And
you know, one of the saddest things of all time, by the way, I knew that guy before he was a famous streamer. I knew him when he was just a pro player. And do you know what people wouldn't know? He was one of the nicest pro players, because actually he was a guy who had to kiss everyone's ass. He wasn't one of the top players. He was just a good player. And he was sort of in a lot of teams. He was always in the second and third team. And so he was just a super chill guy. He was the guy, I've done interviews with him, who like would personally thank you after for doing the interview. Like, I really appreciate it. And sort of making the Brazilian scene known, you know, in Brazil, people love you and stuff. And then he just became this massive asshole streamer character where his whole thing, dude, did you know he was apparently doing that at this major? I don't watch it, obviously, it's just things I'm seeing on Reddit. Supposedly, when ESL was having problems, when ESL was doing things like you can't do certain stuff, he was just like inciting the crowd to be like, fuck ESL. So I'm like, what the hell? That's your main partner on the stream. Remember, by the way, this is the same guy that got all that entire crowd to fuck with like 16-year-old Leaf as well and accuse him of cheating. Oh, I'm sick of the whole thing, mate.
He holds
promoting the worst behavior. It's fucked, isn't it?
He is the moral example here that we should all be following and striving to be. Yes, indeed. I mean, speaking of, we didn't actually. There is another way to address the cheating, and it is what ESL actually tried to do. And this is when Gaules got on, you know, his.
Oh, that was what made him upset. You're right. It's when he took the X-ray off. That's what made him pissed off with because the crowd couldn't see it.
That was that specific moment.
By the way, think how mad that is, guys. He was mad that they took the X-ray off because it was making it harder for them to cheat. Like, what are you talking about? What on earth point are you making, you idiot? They're doing that so they can't cheat. You're bloody mistreating us. We have a right to cheat. Like, what are you talking about? You got to fight for your right to be a cheater.
That is, dude, that's exactly it. Well, okay, fair, like to be fair to him in the sense that it wasn't just the in-game, in-studio, in-arena feed.
Oh, it was his as well. Stop it. Because wasn't it that he was the one that was streaming to the arena? So I'm guessing they took his off, right?
Was that?
I'm guessing the logic was they took it off his screen, and his stream was the one that was going to the crowd, right?
Exactly. It was going to the arena, but also it was apparently the Brazilian stream, the main stream. So like the big audience. And so that's where he's saying, you know, like, oh, well, you know, because now he's trying to cast to the mainstream, you know, without the mini map and without
I've got a solution for you, Gaules. Let's just not have the major in Brazil. You can have whatever you want on your stream. Deal?
Like I was saying earlier, remember when like, are you talking about like, who is your priority? Is your priority audience the arena audience, or is it the stream audience? Are you talking about the 10,000 people in the arena? Or are you talking about the 200,000 people tuning in online? Who weighs more, right? In that trade-off. So I could get on board with Gaules complaining there, in the sense that you don't want to fuck the stream up. That's like the 2, 3, however many hundreds of thousands of people are tuning in. That's bad, right? That aside, this could be a way to address the cheating in a sense, is that you have two feeds. You have the feed that goes to the stream with the full production and Gaules and all of that, you know, and then you have the feed that goes into the arena where there is no mini map and there's no X-ray. And so the ability for the fans in the arena to cheat goes out the window, because now, or, you know, in 1v1 situations or whatever specific situations, you immediately cut the X-ray. You know, stuff like that. You know, I'm willing to play with these kinds of games here to try and make it more difficult for the fans to cheat. So that was one thing that we didn't bring up, because, you know, we opened the show obviously talking about this sort of thing. You know, whether or not you were going to have commentary in the studio or in the arena, that sort of thing. I mean, it is one potential way to solve it, and I do appreciate that ESL actually pulled the trigger and did it. You know, instead of just letting the integrity get completely ruined of their match, they actually did try. But yeah, the Gaules situation, it's just Gaules things. I mean, the guy's the biggest stream in Brazil. He definitely feels like he could probably throw his weight around, right? All right. There was another one that was worth talking about as well. The multiple technical issues, let's say, with this tournament.
You know, the problem there, though, look, ESL's already, and all the TOs have already set themselves up for the get out on that one. You know, the get out of jail free. Well, because you can't technically know if it's a Valve problem or an ESL problem, then you just go, it's probably Valve, and just don't address it. Because the real problem is this. As a bigger point, let's be real. All year long, there's been these delays at ESL events. There's been games that just go past midnight. There've been all tech problems. So a lot of people noticed this, Semmler. Loads of people naively, because they don't understand business, when they heard ESL and Faceit bought for $1 billion, they thought the deal was given $1 billion. Did you notice that? And they were like, well, you know, even if it's blood money, at least now it'll be sick, won't it? They'll spend all the... No, they owners, they gave the billion to the owners, and now it's like that famous story. Do you know this? A lot of people don't know this detail. You know, supposedly, I don't have my facts on this one. It's what I heard, though. It makes sense. I heard part of the reason why that, like, Amazon Rings of Power thing from Lord of the Rings isn't very good is because the same thing, they said it cost $1 billion, right, Semmler? What people don't know is this. Supposedly, loads of it was just for the rights, because the estate was like, no, until they just kept putting zeros, and they were like, right, I guess yes, eventually, just like ESL. So the logic was, it's not that it's a bit, because here's the thing, if someone spent $1 billion on a TV show, mate, I'd watch it almost no matter what. Like, give it a chance. It could be fucking sick, right? Could be like Matrix times 1,000. But if you spent like most of the billion to just get the rights, and then you had to make the show, it's not going to be the same thing. It's not what it's hyped to be. So what people don't know is they thought ESL would only get better because of being bought. As far as I can tell, dude, that's been the moment that it just like sunk. That's when ESL went from like just below Blast and like very consistently good events to like, they just dropped off a cliff. Now they're just in Malta with no crowd, and then fucking shitty like setups with like remote in Katowice, and then lag, and then people DDoSing specific players, and then like the server crash. Like, mate, how many problems are you going to have, dude? You used to be the kings of the ESL production.
Do you think that this has to do, because the thing is like the 2008 crash that apparently almost killed esports was before my time, obviously. But like, we are going into another recession now. Do you think that this is because like they are trying to cut as many corners as possible and save as much money as possible? And I mean, that is the thing, you know, they're not in Malta because they want to be. They're not in Paris because they want to be. They're not in Abu Dhabi because they want to be. They're there because there's some kind of deal that's being cut to cut costs and to make it more affordable. You know, so
the jokes write themselves there. To be fair, I'd imagine there's quite a few people in Abu Dhabi, not because they want to be. They're sort of forced to be, you know.
Yeah, there you go.
Think about it. Think about it. All right. Slaving away at a job, to be fair. You know, exactly.
But no, that's the thing. Like, I really wonder if we're just going to have to get used to it, because we're expecting such a high standard now in terms of events, because money before was cheap in a sense. They could get away with it, but now that their new ownership is probably going to be like, listen, you have to find a way to turn this to black. Like you have to turn this, you have to make this profitable, or at least not hemorrhage money out of both ends. Right. You got to figure it out. And so ESL are scrambling, and Blast. I mean, we know that Blast just sunk millions and millions last year or the year before, man, time flies. Regardless, it's not like Blast are rolling in cash either. So it's a really tight situation now, I think, in CSGO. And I wonder if we're going to have to start getting ready for an adjustment in production quality. We're going to have to start expecting there to be some issues again, because they can't afford all of the cost cutting measures that they can't afford all of the frills that they had before, right? They really do have to go the razor's edge now and dance on the line. And it just seems like ESL, this time they're kind of falling off a bit here and there. Whereas before, maybe they had a safety net that they no longer have now. What do you think about that?
Well, listen, I agree in general. I don't have really a take. So what I'll do is I'll just do a silly joke instead of analysis, which is like, and guys, remember, they also not only have to pay for Skybox, but Anders to run it. So the costs. Listen, those margins are getting stretched pretty wide. If people don't know, by the way, we've always made a joke of it, but like, it's not even that there's anything.
We
bad
can
about
talk
it.
about that real quick, dude. Talk about a scuffed segment. The first time I saw the Anders Architect thing, I was just like, what the fuck is this? It's like Trace just like meandering over, and then it's Anders standing in front of a TV. So it was what we thought it was going to be when the talent announcement got
also
made.
I'm going to say this, right, even though it's mean, because technically that is a very good app. Actually, it's very well coded. It can run there. But all I'll say is this, right? People used to complain back in the day that the reason you couldn't have CS 1.6 on TV is because the graphics were really bad. What if someone who's never seen CS:GO tuned in and they thought that was the game? Like all the guys just moving around. Like, I know, like it just looks like someone took like an action man, like, and then the pepper pot is you, the AWPer, and then the action man comes in. It's like that's what it looks like. So imagine if they tuned in, like, this is what everyone's watching. Like, yeah,
actually, talk about cost cutting measures. I think that, like, I'm willing to bet that Anders isn't even getting paid to be there. I'm willing to bet that,
as in they just hired the Skybox thing and he comes with it.
It's just there because it's a Skybox feature. So it's like
it's the way you make that sound like it's like some feature where if you buy like a really expensive barbecue, like they send the guy to grill the meat with it or something, like, ding dong, I'm here. What do you want? Ribeye or something like?
Dude, I think that's what's going on.
I could be it. Yeah.
That's exactly what's going on. Is that Anders like this so that he can claim to have been at another major. He's not casting, and he wasn't going to be casting because Sato's there with Moses. Yeah. So it probably is just a thing where it's just like, listen, I'll come over and do like the weatherman stuff on Skybox. You guys take Skybox. I cut a deal. You don't have to pay me to be there. Whatever. Like, I would not be surprised that is actually the situation, and that he's not even getting paid to do anything. Like, he's just there to do his segments, and it just sucks because the segments are scuffed. Like, I really wish that to do this, like if you were actually going to do this as a promotion for your product, I really wish that they would just make it a recording. Like, you find the fucking time to go with a couple of cameramen and a producer in the camera room or whatever, in the production room, and just record the segments. Take do some interviews throughout the day, take some highlights from the matches, do some interviews, put it all together, and then just have Anders, have it crisp, clean, no interaction with Stunna, none of that. He can talk to you, the fans, talk to the camera, turn back to the screen. This is the interesting thing, and I talked to the Fanny about this, and like, instead of it being some mega scuffed fucking ghetto look, like the lighting you can't tell what's on the TV. It's not legible. It's not clear. It's all just ESL. Now that the more I'm talking about it, the more I'm just like, ESL gray. Once again, we meet. That is unfortunately just what it looks like. I just hope I hope that they step it up, and that it's going to be something more, because obviously you can do so much with that app. You're right. The software is sick. Like,
obviously, don't let any Brazilian fan hear that. Like, ESL what? Oh, gray. You said gray, right? Okay, yeah, I'm fine with grays.
23 plus 1. What?
Yeah. By the way, they even tried to claim, if you ever saw like on some video, Richard, like, yeah, that's also like he's exaggerating that as well. It's like, give me a break. Like, Richard even looking at that, you're all just liars. Why are you all still lying? Why are y'all always lying? That's what I want to know. Bring out that Vine.
Why you always lying? But like, why is it? Oh, because they have to fit in. They have to fit in.
Next.
Next. Next. I mean, do we want to try and talk a bit about these? What's your? So hold on, actually, because Note was actually keeping track of this, and I did appreciate it. Where going into it, you had the 3v3 Fnatic disaster where they DC'd together because somebody apparently kicked a power cable out
That already gives me trigger trauma, because if you don't know, a lot of modern fans won't know this. That is one of the other things infamously that caused Brazilians to have a really bad rep. A lot of people won't know this story. So as the historian, I'll take you all back in time. So you're all going to think, because I always say, and I'm wrong, actually, I've just realized, I always say the first moment the Brazilian fans were terrible, because this is when they were terrible to me, was when they got the really good lineup at the end of 2015, where they got Taco and FNX and Zeus joined, and they did that run at DreamHack Winter. And, you know, for that one, you can even see why they were triggered, right? Because remember, it was when they lost 16-0, but then they beat like all the best teams in the world in best of threes, and they came second to Fnatic at the event, the one where Dennis had joined Fnatic, right? That was where just predicting against the Brazilian team got you death threats. And people saying, like, we'll kill you, how dare you, you're heels, right? But actually, a few months earlier, when they still had the old lineup, before they kicked out like Steel or whoever the fuck was in the team, maybe Bolts or something, before they got in FNX and Taco, they went to an event. I think it was either an iBuyPower Masters or something, or it was like RGN Pro Series. It was like a North American LAN that had like Cloud9, Team Liquid, Renegades, which had the Brazilians, a couple of them, Gamers Academy and Luminosity Gaming as they were at the time. And at this LAN, they had a scenario where the same thing happened. Some cameraman walked by and accidentally like kicked the cable that, like, I think did something like pull like the network cable out of like some, like the Brazilian player's PC, like Fur's PC or something. And famously what happened was they came to the Team Liquid players, because Team Liquid on the other side, and Hiko was like the representative. And they said to them, even though it should have been like a classic thing, that's where the admin's supposed to look at the rule book and go, right, well, in our tournament, you know, like in the modern day ones, for example, after a certain point in the round where enough damage has been done, you can't replay the round. Like it just stands, and then, you know, on the next round we'll change it, right? But instead, because the Brazilians were pressuring them, like, it's unfair, man, it's unfair. And then they were saying to like Hiko, like, we agreed to just replay the round, replay. And they were pressuring him, right? So Hiko just said, like, I'm not going to say that. Like, it's up to the admin. He has to decide. And he made the admins decide. Now, this was reported on Reddit and by the Brazilians, like, you know, Hiko bad spots and shit, like, could have just agreed to a replay. But Hiko's whole position was like, look, I'm not making a decision on this. It's up to the admin to do it. So when that happened, they were all hating on, well, this is like the same shit again, because the one that they're talking about with the Fnatic one, by the way, was the wildest one. I was watching this game live. What happened was Fnatic, literally, by the way, in this game, didn't win a single T round on Overpass. But there was a round where all of a sudden Mezzi got like a double headshot and they rushed onto the site. But then you could see from the way they were moving that like the players on, what team was it? Outsiders, I think it was it Outsiders? Yes, it was Outsiders with the team. They like weren't moving as well though, so they were just like stuck or something. And so what you saw was that on both sides of the equation, people were lagging. Because here's what's funny: when the Outsiders players lagged, then Fnatic got to rush onto the site and get some kills. But then at the last second, the Outsiders guy killed them and won the round anyway. So because in that scenario, Outsiders got fucked first, then Fnatic got fucked, and then and then at the end, everyone had gotten fucked, and the round was a shit show. Actually, rare time, both teams were just like, why don't we just replay the whole round? Like, that was shit for everyone. Like, no one wanted that. But the joke was that was the only round that they would have won, and they didn't win another T round. So, like, that's an example of how bad it is. We're not just talking like one person took a bit of damage and there's a problem. Like, we're talking about rounds where like everyone just like, it's like that's not even a round. That's nothing. Because when I was watching it, you could see from people's POVs, like, you know, that thing where they sort of lag a bit, like they just stood still. And you're like, why isn't he reacting? And then they suddenly react, but it like speeds up, and then like 5 bullets come out the gun instantly. Like, that's the worst feeling ever. In fact, the joke is that's what online. Remember what CSGO TV used to be like back in the day, where it used to ruin all the kills like that? It would make them all like too fast. And it would and you would see it like before, and then you would all get that lag at the end of the game that meant you knew the game had ended before the bloody round had ended. Like, this is like amateur hour shit, isn't it? So if it is Valve, by the way, then I'm actually really disappointed. I thought CSGO was a very sturdy game.
This is where you could have all sorts of things, though. It's like CSGO could be it. I mean, why is it that other TOs aren't having similar issues when it comes to DCs or PCs freezing up? I mean, Dexter's case where they had to replace multiple PCs and all sorts of stuff like that. I mean, that is one thing that I was kind of playing with the idea where this is the risk that you run in terms of infrastructure, right? Because infrastructure also includes your PCs and what you're running your game on, right? And so usually what's going on is that the tournament organizer has like 50, 60, 100 PCs or whatever, and they're all the same. And so you shouldn't really be able to get these kinds of issues repeating on multiple PCs, or if it is an issue, then it is going to repeat on multiple PCs, like in Dexter's case. But like, what's making me wonder is going on here in Brazil is like, are all the PCs the same quality? Are they sourced in Brazil? Were they shipped over from Germany? Like, what's going on there? And could that be the thread that's causing all of these DCs? But then you mentioning Malta and them having similar tech issues over there makes me wonder, like maybe this is really just an ESL thing, different issues, different.
They've had everything, the whole gamut
again,
this year. It seems like
if you're not working, the other side of things is that if you're not working with people who work with CS:GO every day, day in, day out, like running CS:GO tournaments and knowing what the bugs are, good admins and good tech teams, guys. Like if you're sourcing some production or sourcing some admins or sourcing on location, then you have no quality control. You don't know if those guys are going to know the ins and outs of how to set things up and all of that, and that could lead to just more opportunity for fuck ups like these. The only problem is that now it's fucking up the major, and that is you can go on and on about how, you know, like one round does one round make a big difference, or, you know, once damage is done, that's it. It's just the risk of the game. But like that's not supposed to happen in majors. We've had majors in the past where there have been no tech issues, right, to fuck everything up. So it is making me wonder, like, what is going on with ESL right now, and how is it that is it just because they're in Brazil and the Brazilian infrastructure isn't that great? Like what's going on that's allowing this to happen? Yeah. So that was one of those standout points. Like, okay, fair, hopefully here on
might not happen in the playoffs, put that way. Exactly. Yeah. Has to be resolved by playoffs.
I mean, well, it has to be resolved by the playoffs. Like, again, this is the kind of thing where if it's true that the Fnatic 3v3 happens because they fucking kick a power cable out or something like that, it's like, how is that even a possibility? Like how like you would think that you wouldn't be having any cables anywhere near in any way able to be able for that to happen. You know, it's just like completely throws you off. It makes you really wonder what the hell's going on.
But it's where people sadly will know this story because Richard told it many times. There's actually a famous story from 1.6 I'll tell very briefly, where basically Zeus from Na'Vi, when he was playing at DreamHack against SK Gaming with Robban and Forrest and those guys, because they used to play like where you're like directly facing each other, but with like a very thin like paper fucking like thing with DreamHack written on it between the two of you. Your PCs, basically, you can essentially, if you wanted to kick, you could kick the other person's PC. And Zeus didn't just kick the cable out once, Semmler. He managed to do it something like 2 or 3 times, at which point, like, spoiler, you know that famous thing, I think it's like an Ian Fleming quote where it's like, you know, once is like an accident, twice is coincidence, 3 times is enemy action. Because it's like, it's all fucking coincidence anymore, is it? And by the way, total shocker, I'm sure, for that, Semmler. Like, Zeus of all people. He was sort of like a disingenuous piece of shit who might just be trying to get everything for himself and fuck everyone over. Wow, that's crazy. Shit, man. It's like that famous video. Oh, you don't know it, sadly. There's a really good video that Richard once linked in, like one of his, like, I hate it here's or something. It was so funny. You'd love it. Where there's this guy and it's a news report about how in England there was some like guy with like a, you know, like a hole in the wall place that you go and buy a burger from. Like you go up and go, oh, I can have like a cheeseburger or whatever. The joke was it was like an underground drug ring. And what would happen is you'd say like, oh, a double Big Mac or whatever, you know, and obviously that would be like loads of bags of Coke under the burger. And when they went there, they interviewed some guy who was like a customer waiting for a burger, and they were like, did you know that this place, like, you know, is selling like cocaine inside the burgers or whatever? And he was like, what? Nah, never knew that. But the way he says it is like so unconvincing. As though like as he said it, he's just like looking around, like quickly like dropping some little bag. Like, it was just like that, exactly. Never knew that. That's what I feel like when I hear stories about Zeus and all, like, oh really? Fuck. That's wild, man.
What a shock. What a shock. It's crazy how that story keeps coming up as well. Now, it's not the only time. Like, there's been multiple cases back in that, and like Na'Vi were kind of notorious for it, weren't they?
That's some shady shit they were doing for sure.
All right. Well, there was one more point actually. Not in this major, although we can talk about some results real quick if we want. But there was one point that it's interesting to bring up, is that due to the performance so far in whatever the challenger stage, I always fuck this up. Challenger stage. Of the challenger stage, they've actually the Americas region has actually lost a spot for the next major.
I love the way it's not bad enough, by the way, that like the Brazilian teams failed all the home crowd, you know, like EG made a mockery of themselves. It's like now you just get this mad announcement like America will be punished. It's like some like fucking Hunger Games shit. Like the American region will be punished. Less rations for the winter. Like, oh, please, why? Fucking Breeze, you've killed us all. Like, what's going on? Like, because the problem I have with that is it doesn't quite work as a logic, Semmler. Because like basically, you can't really like punish a whole region because like a few teams failed. Like, for example, does that mean if a different team had qualified and they got through, would they not lose a spot? Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
That seems a bit off because the problem is I understand punishing that team. I don't know how, but I don't really get how you can start to punish the whole. Like, for example, I'll give you the obvious example. You know, the team that lost out to Imperial was Complexity because they kind of like choked a bit at the end and Imperial like clutched it out in that last series, right? Complexity is not a bad squad, Semmler. Like, they probably actually would have like been borderline to get through here. They would at least have won a game, put out with. They wouldn't have gone 0-3, in my opinion. So, like, why do they sort of get punished by having one less spot to qualify to? Because Imperial was bad. You know what I mean? It's like, I sort of get what they mean. Like, I also agree. The thing I have a problem with is if I look at like when G2 failed in Europe, I can't go, you idiots, you didn't make the major. But oh, don't worry, Renegades, Greyhound rather. Greyhound and IHC are there though, because they have their slots. And then also, good news, over in America, they're just letting anyone fucking qualify. It's like, that would feel whack. Like, what the fuck? What am I playing for here? Like, because that's the thing when they say, like, you're at the major. It's like, let me know. It's like, there's another thing. There should be one of those memes again. Like, you know, never ask a woman her age. Like, an American team. Like, which RMR did you come through? Like, you know, some shit like that. Like, yeah, exactly. It doesn't even fucking count, does it?
Never ask a woman her age.
There's like a meme like that, you know, the one like goes like that. I had a similar one where the joke was, I remember I did an edit of it where I was like, I never ask, you know, a fallen supporter which politician fallen supports. By the way, there's another detail no one's even brought up. We won't go into it, but you do know, like, of all the times to have a major in Brazil, why are you doing it around a massive election that like people are doing like mass protests? Like, what are you doing? Like, you putting these people in danger.
No, I do feel for ESL on this one. Like, they really did get fucked multiple times, right? Because remember, this wasn't supposed to happen. This Rio Major, this major was supposed to happen.
Oh, that's true. You are right on that.
Before Rona.
Yes.
And so they finally, after all of this Rona, the coof and everything, you know, fucking everything up, they finally get to run their event, and then it's in one of the most controversial elections in recent history in Brazil. Fucking riots.
Do you want to hear a good joke? This is a multicultural joke, Sam. So you know it's already going to be amazing. Okay. Right? You know the reason why those Brazilian fans at the event are acting so rowdy? Because they're out of bolso, aren't they? Now, you're going to think that means something else, but bolso in Portuguese means pocket. So they're out of pocket. Fire. There we go. That's the sort of work I would have done on the desk if I'd been there. Well, I wouldn't have done it on the desk if I was in Brazil, but
yeah, that is definitely a thing.
So freebie.
All right, so after just 2 teams from the Americas made it to the legend stage of IEM Rio, Fury, and Liquid, the number of spots at the next major for teams from the Americas RMR drops down from 6 to 5. So that brings it up to 17 spots for Europe, plus 1.
I like the way eventually it's just going to be like, it's going to be like Europe plus like 1 an Asia team, 1 Americas. It's like, welcome to the European major.
Yeah, that's going
to be mad
because now it's going to be based off of performance. Like, you're going to get the deeper into the tournament you get, the more slots you get. And so if you get shut out in the challenger stage, or if you just get shut out in the RMRs, well, tough noogies, you're not going to get to go. Like, that is pretty much just going to be it. Like, going forward, it is going to be performance based. And I think this is actually a clever way of Valve to handle it, because now they don't have, like, when people are just constantly going on and on about how there needs to be more spots for Asia, you know, it's unfair. It's just like, well, earn them. Like, that's all Valve is saying. All Valve is literally just saying, like, well, earn the spots then.
Yeah.
And so create your infrastructure, create your tournament circuit, create your competitive environment, get better at the game, and earn your spots. And then, hey, you'll get more spots. If Asia becomes better, you'll get more spots. I mean, it's hard to argue with. So Valve have, in a way, you know, just come up with a clever solution to the whole situation. You know, if people are going to be bitching online, well, there you go. So fair enough. It was worth bringing up real quick on the show, just in case you guys had missed that bit of news. But I did appreciate that one. That was an interesting one, especially given results. All right. We also no Brazilian cheating scumbag fans. We've already talked about that. I'm trying to go through here. Yeah, I think we've covered just about everything. Was there anything else? I thought there was something else. There
was one thing. You missed the one about the ESL, like, no, the CSGO account tweeting at Fallen.
Even this, the show note that I have here is even CSGO main account is calling Fallen a check stealer. So
I don't think that's quite what they meant. Like, obviously, the tweet just said, like, in case it was your last game, thanks for all you've done. But the joke is, Semmler's taking it like, look, you should really retire. Like, that was a fucking joke. Like, oh, I agree. Because here's the funny thing, though. In this interview where he revealed, spoiler, he isn't retiring. By the way, guys, if you haven't figured out, this is like Virtus Pro. I said this joke way back in the day. You know, when Virtus Pro used to get paid the 20K a month and everyone knew they did. And everyone would speculate, like fans, like, oh, dreadful results. Who do you think will step down first, Pasha or Taz? And I was like, mate, admit they're making 20K a month in Poland. Like, the joke is, you'll have to pry that 20K out of their cold, dead hands. And I even used to say, I had that whole theory that that's why they used to take turns to say things on Twitter. Like, Pasha would be like, damn, I feel really bad. And everyone would be like, cheer up, Pasha, it'll get better. Then Taz would be like, what's even going on with us? It's like, you know, it's your turn to say the shit that gets us another 20K in another month of, you know, stave execution. So, like, I feel like it's the same thing with Fallen. No matter what he says, like, you know, my life is about more than that. I want to spend time with my family. 25K a month. You know what? Families for the future. Right now is my 25K time. Like, give me a break. The joke is his family's all the fucking Benjamins, isn't it? It's like, Benjamin, Jefferson. I don't even know the other ones, whatever. All the $2 bill or whatever. No, so here's my joke. In the interview with oh, no, it's just a .esports one where they're talking about it, right? Where they quote whatever he said in the post-match interview, Fallen, right? Where they ask him, are you going to retire? This is the line that killed me. Oh, I laughed so hard. Because it goes, but he also underlines he's feeling drained and he needs to focus on his private life as well. No, you're not feeling drained, Fallen. Imperial's feeling drained. You've gone there, drained all those resources out for a whole year. And now you're like, you know what? Might just do another year. It's like, mate, his favorite song must actually be that song from the classic 1991 album Nevermind by Nirvana, the song Drain You, because it would obviously be these lyrics, wouldn't it? It just fits the Fallen scenario. It goes, whereabouts is the lyrics? Let me see. It goes, one baby to another says, I'm lucky to have met you. Well, that's obviously what he'd say to Imperial. I'm lucky to have bloody met a fool like you. It's pay me. He goes, I don't care what you think unless it is about me. I mean, that just writes itself. Then it goes, it is now my duty to completely drain you. I can't handle it. I can't.
How do you even come up with this reference?
I know, it's a good one, isn't it? Here's the thing I can't handle, by the way. This is why people are so whack. You know, when people post all those clips already, like, whoa, Fallen's such a legend. He's in the crowd now, right? He's in the crowd of a major he was already eliminated from 0-3. The joke there is he's getting more camera time, and he's like, you know what? I've been paid already. Like, checks in the mail.
He can't even leave anyway because he still has the show match. They still have the show match to play. You remember?
Yes.
It's like you can't even leave, so you might as well do something, I guess. But like that was just how cynical ESL were in the sense that, like, listen, we have to have Fallen and the guys somehow at the venue. You know, one way or another, they have to be at the venue. Okay, we'll do the show match. That way, at least we guarantee that they'll be there on the, you know, in the final run in the top 8. So I guess he's just gonna have to hang around for a bit, right? Dude, it is brutal. It is brutal. But I was howling laughing because obviously you pointed it out. I saw it that way where it's like even CSGO are throwing shade. Like, this is this is too good. But of course, they're being legit.
The only thing is, I actually have a serious point about that though, which is bearing in mind, look, with the concept that it might be the last dance, it was implied, even though they've obviously all acted the opposite way. The idea is it means it's your last year. It means this is the end. So logically, what people are saying is this is the last major at least. So if this is the last major, that's why the Valve account's doing it. You know, goodbye and thanks for all you've done. Right. The problem I have with that one is he at least did at least infer he might be retiring Semmler. But this does actually rub me really the wrong way, because I was at that ESL 1 Cologne in 2019 where NiP made like the miracle run when they weren't a good team anymore. It was the one where they just brought Plopskin, but they still had Get Right in Forest. And they made that insane run where they actually finished top 6, even though this was in the era when like loads of teams were better than them. Like fucking Ents was like last place or something. Like there was a load of squads way better. And so what happened at that tournament, right, was because it was at ESL 1 Cologne and they had people like OJ and they had all these big figures, everyone had for some reason decided, even though he never said he was retiring, I think like NiP themselves implied like maybe Get Right will retire, but it was NiP, it wasn't Get Right whoever said it, Semmler. Everyone in this venue kept making the narrative constantly like, and is this Get Right's last event? And every interview dude would be like, and this might be the last event game for you, of course, Chris. And he never said that once, by the way. And they even did it. And this really made me sick because I knew he hadn't decided to retire and he was still waiting to see. And obviously he did go on to play on Dignitas for like another year and do a bunch of streaming and all that shit. I knew that he wasn't going to retire. And so the worst thing of all was when they were eliminated, and remember, as I just said, because they made top 6, he was on the stage in the Lanxess. When they interviewed him, like OJ couldn't know. He just thought this was a real storyline. He actually asked him for real, dude. Come on. Is this really it? One more year? And then the crowd are doing that thing they do in American sports when you retire, like, one more year. And it's like, what was fucked was, it was like people wanted to like force him into retirement. Because it's like they just decided, right, this is our moment. Because by the way, there was a feeling of that here, I think, because it's the Brazilian major, isn't it? It's like, say it now, go on, say the line, say that you're going to retire now so we can all like cheer you. And this can be like my cool, I just want the story to end here, like cancel the season 2, like just end the story here. But it's like, mate, you can think what you like about Fallen. I don't like some of the things he's done in business. Obviously, I think some of the things he's done shitty. He's a brilliant player in the past. But one thing you should never do is if someone's a legend, unless they just don't get a contract, they can't play Pro CS. You don't make them hang up. They decide when they hang up. Because remember, when they do hang it up, that's forever. You can never come back then. You're never going to be in a top team again. You're going to be no one. Like, there's no path back. So bear in mind, it's a career that you do where you do retire when you're like 32 or something. You let that guy decide. If he wants one more year, mate, look, I'll laugh if someone pays him loads of money, but I don't begrudge him playing. If someone will give you the gig and you can still play Pro CS, there'll be 10 years from now where you'll wish, I wish I had done one last year. You know how many sports stars say that? The ones who'd retired like early when they were still good. And they're like, fuck, I wish I'd sort of just kept going until I was injured. Like, what if I had 2 more years of me? What if I could have like got more points in the NBA or something? What if I could have like won one more championship? That tortures you. So when you are a great player like Fallen, don't do that. And don't do it just because you want it to be like a TV show. Be like, I want my nice moment, like closure and stuff. Like, it's his life and his career, mate.
No, you're bang on the money. The injury one, actually, the now that you mention it, that actually made me think. I was listening to the Artosis interview you did recently, which is straight fire. Definitely go and listen to it, guys. Fucking awesome. But you mentioned MVP as well, and how he is not necessarily considered in the GOAT conversation anymore. And I mean, it's like that guy literally stopped because he just couldn't physically play.
He was fucked. Yeah,
like that was it. Like he just couldn't physically play. He couldn't keep going. So I agree with you. It's like you're playing, you're competing. What's the saying, right? That like every athlete has two deaths. It's like the day that you retire and the day you actually die, because like you are just going to try to keep competing until the end. Either you,
dude, that's one. That's one
to.
of the things, because this isn't really the case in like British sports, except maybe like boxing or UFC or something. Like in most British sports, you can sort of like, if you're a footballer, you just retire when you're not fast enough or you don't get good enough gig, and you don't. Remember, you can go down all the leagues. You just don't want to play like Division 2 when you used to be a star in the Premier League, right? So on some level, you choose when you decide to retire or you just get wrecked, right? The moment I knew American sports were fucked, because remember, this is before I knew how bad the NFL is, where the entire sport, as far as I can tell, is just giving each other brain damage. Like that's bad in itself. But the maddest was when I heard about baseball, dude, because I thought baseball seems fine. And someone told me, oh no, you don't know what it's like, dude. If you're the pitcher, a star pitcher, you just keep throwing until your arm is fucked. And then when your arm's fucked, you're like, right, well, I've got to live the rest of my life, but see you guys, I'm off. Like, just put it in a sling. Like, what? Like, because obviously if people don't know that, like action's like really like, it's not like a natural movement, is it? And you're just like whiplashing your own arm. And then eventually like, well, fuck my whole arm. Just going to go and take painkillers the rest of my life. See ya. Bye. Like, that's so dark, dude. That's so dark.
Oh, of course. Now I'm fucking blanking on his name. The one pitcher who was pitching for the LA Dodgers, and he caught all that flack. He was getting so much attention because he does all of these crazy warm-ups. Like he revolutionized like how pitchers warm up with like throwing balls against the wall, and like he had this baton that he was like waggling around to like get his shoulders and his forearms warmed up. Stuff like that. Fuck, I can't. How am I? I
tried Googling Dodgers pitcher warm-ups crazy. Didn't find anything, unfortunately. So
no, he was a spider tack. Dodgers pitcher spider tack.
Okay.
Can't believe I'm blanking on his name.
Spider attack. No, didn't find anything. I don't know what you're talking about now. Keep going.
Here he is. Oh, fuck. Okay.
I believe you. I just believe you. Okay, it's all right.
No.
You don't have to prove it to me, Semmler.
No, it's not that. It's going to drive me crazy. I need to know his name. It's right here. I'm seeing his picture everywhere. But it's like Garrett Cole. It's not Garrett Cole. Who the... Trevor Bauer. Okay, fuck. Trevor Bauer. Shit.
Jack's brother.
But like that point you're talking about, Trevor Bauer. So he's he was like a guy who like comes to mind because he was really controversial with the spider tack, the sticky stuff that they put on their hands.
Oh, right.
So they get better grip on the ball.
Right. Yeah.
So obviously, that's illegal, but they have rosin and it's all this.
It's all the Hunden of his day.
Dude, he was figuring that shit out. But he also caught a lot of flack because, or just, getting mocked basically because to avoid those kinds of injuries, because you could have literal injuries that like just blow up your
Sure.
elbow and you need surgery and you don't know if you're coming back and all that stuff. It just happens, like it just happens out of the blue because you're just pitching so much, and then all of a sudden you just throw one pitch and that's it, shit pops, and you just need to go and get surgery, and you just cross your fingers. So like he is like just super disciplined about all the warm-ups, all the stretching, doing everything he possibly can to get as much mileage out of his arm before, you know, it all comes out. And now I just got completely sidetracked in terms of like, oh no, it's just in terms of injury, in terms of like drop off, you know, where it just could end tomorrow. Yeah, baseball is brutal, man. Like those guys, they don't mess around. Like their arms, everything is just crazy. Like the catchers, they're just destroying their knees completely because they're just in that position, that squat the entire time for their entire career. A lot of respect for baseball. They have some of the best, talking about content, you know, though, they have some of the best YouTube content, like the baseball guys, John Boy Media, Trevor Bauer, like the stuff that they put out. It's actually like they've got a legit whole thing going on with their side content that I wish it would be possible in a way. Like I don't even know how we would be able to reproduce that in CS:GO, but like that would be sick to have similar stuff in CS:GO. But yeah, the baseball content on YouTube is fire. It's actually got me interested in the game.
Obviously, any Brazilian fans tuning in here, like pitching and catching, not in my sport. Oh, you mean just a game?
Not
Fair
what
enough.
they
Yeah,
do.
totally fine. Yeah. And obviously, they're worried because they heard Bauer and they were like, what show is he in? 24. You mean 23 plus one? That's what we call it in Brazil. Yeah, go on,
That's it. All right, dude. Do you think it's I think that's it for topics.
Yeah. Questions?
We could do questions. We didn't really talk about results.
Go on then, hit me with a couple of angles. What do you want to talk about? What teams are interesting to you?
I mean, really. All right. So, I mean, was there, I guess the main thing, obviously, the main question is like, was there anybody that that didn't make the cut that you expected to make the cut? And I'll, you know, answer my own question. I think maybe OG is probably the one.
OG is the obvious one, not least because if you look it up, dude, their whole team, if you look at the numbers, you'd think they made it through, mate. Dexter had really good numbers. Neofrag had really good numbers. They actually had like all across the board. Everyone's fragging. Obviously, they were in the game. The problem they had was for the 2-2 game, they drew like Vitality or whatever, didn't they? Yeah, Vitality. So the problem is they were just in the toughest possible spot. Also, you look who they played. I mean, they played Fnatic, Furia, Vitality. Yeah, they had some tough opponents. OG one's the big one because obviously elsewhere, Bad News Eagles made it through. Now, I will say I'm a hater, so it's like playing who? 0-0 Nation, worst team in the tournament. Big, I mean, that's just fucking nothing. And then you beat Gamer Legion, who actually turns out was just a flash in the pan from the RMR. So that's not that great. Big themselves, look, fair play for beating Fury in a BO1. That's pretty impressive. Then they beat Bad News Eagles, so it's just people I don't care about beating people I don't care about. Then they beat Greyhound.
Yeah.
Who gives a fuck? Oh, they lost to Bad News Eagles, rather. And then they beat 9Z. And if people don't know, the 9Z team couldn't beat anyone that wasn't from South America, basically. So, like, those two making it through when OG doesn't is just a bit brutal. It's like, if OG had their opponents, wouldn't OG have made it through, you know? It's kind of what I feel like.
That's the that sort of situation. I mean, the same kind of vibe for Furia as well. Furia, their 3 wins are against teams that didn't qualify. They didn't make the cut. You know, Gamer Legion, O Nation.
Oh, they had some pretty bad ones, yes.
Big. You know, it's shit like that where it's just like this, the way that this works.
In general, though, the good teams did all make it, like, aside from that. Like, that was one thing I was glad about. Like, obviously, there's one area, by the way, where just being experienced will help you, Semmler. Everyone else was losing their mind when Cloud9 and Vitality went 0-2 in the BO1s. Mate, these are like the top teams in the world. They were going to beat almost everyone in the best of these except each other, weren't they? So I knew, like, everyone else, dude, was for real. After those 2 BO1s, we're having conversations like, right, and then obviously the Vitality projects failed. So do they keep Spinx? And, you know, Nafani and Cloud9, like, probably time for him to go. It's like, bro, they've played 2 maps. Like, and as you saw, look, it's not like Cloud9 played that grip, but Vitality had some good games. Like, they're just world-class teams. It's really hard in a LAN best of 3 to beat those teams. You can win a lot of games in a BO1, especially with the way the veto works. You are, like, it was so unlikely they were going to get knocked out, in my opinion. Like, I always thought they were a lock to still go through. And the joke now, if you've never followed the CS tournament before, it's not a linear progression. Like, someone like Cloud9 or Vitality could just wake up in this next phase and be like the best team in the tournament and murk everyone at 3-0 or the playoffs.
Now they're going to play against the more elite teams that they'll be more studied for.
Probably,
be ready.
Yeah.
Or this is actually the long con that they're setting themselves up for because they wanted to come last seed in this phase so that they could go up against the first seeds and get an even better opponent, i.e. Cloud9 against FaZe, because that's what's happening. So, like, I wanted to get your thoughts real quick before we answer questions. Like, what are your thoughts on this whole seeding thing? Because I see you and Tommy going back and forth on Twitter, and And it really does feel kind of brutal right now where you're going to get, so going into this whole major, I'm just like, listen, I will be happy if we get FaZe Cloud9 in one semifinal and Vitality Na'Vi in the other semifinal. They all fucking go toe to toe. And from there, the top 4 is just gorgeous. And we're going to get a banger, whichever way it breaks. We're getting that in the first round of the next stage. Like we're getting Cloud9 FaZe first round, Vitality Na'Vi. Best of ones.
Yeah, but only in a BO1.
Exactly.
That's not that cool, is it? Yeah. No, the problem there is if people don't know, seeding at majors just sucks. Like if you do a normal tournament, like even if you use the ESL ranking that people might not agree with, the way you rank a tournament goes like this, guys. Seed 1, if there's 16 teams, plays seed 16. They have the easiest match. Seed 2 plays seed 15. If people don't know, in the opening matches, like what I would describe as 4 of the 5 best teams in the world play each other. FaZe plays Cloud9 and Na'Vi plays Vitality. That can never happen because here's the other problem with that, guys. You might all think, well, hey, it's fun though. It's going to be an exciting BO1. Yeah, but remember, in the Swiss system, each win, you need 3 and it gets you through. So that means elsewhere, here's what else is happening while teams that might play in the final playing BO1s. You have Big play Sprout. Dude, that's like an RMR match. You have fucking
Furia
Bad
ends.
News Eagles play Spirit. You know
Furia
what I mean?
ends
Like
as well, dude. Like
yeah, these are just matches where it's like, how can these matches take place in the same tournament? It's because the seeding's just scoffed. Because unfortunately, what Valve and Riot does the same in League of Legends, mate. What they'll never do, unfortunately, is use any system that involves humans. They don't want it to be like, oh, you know, like HLTV says this, or Thorin says this, or an expert.
They don't own it.
And they think it's just biased. They think it's like, oh, but you'll be biased. It's like, listen, mate, I'll be way less biased than a random dice throw of like, oh, turns out I'm going to act like Vitality's the 13th best team in the tournament. It's like, dude, they're like the 3rd best team in the world. Like, what are you doing? Like, because I've always said this point. It's why on Twitter, you notice I even said, I'm a vocal critic of HLTV, but I'd take their bloody ranking over any of this shit, this nonsense of random teams. Because I've always said this. If I make fun of HLTV, it's going to be like, look, Semmler, they have someone in 4th who I think 7th. It's never going to be like, look, they have in 4th the team who's the 20th best. That can never happen. They're never going to be that far up. But the major does that. If people don't know, like the major absolutely does. Like Sprout versus Big is mental. How can that possibly be happening? Like what we have to do is we have to pretend all the rest of Counter-Strike doesn't exist. And the reason it's scuffed is this. It isn't just the previous phase. It's that you get your seed based on your individual region. Well, think about this. Compared to the Americas RMR, the European RMR could be a major. You know what I mean? It's so stacked. So coming 3-0 in that should get you a top seed. Why does Team Liquid get a top seed from coming out of NA? You know what I mean? Why do they get to skip ahead of Vitality? Because they top fragged a bad RMR. Like, but that is how the seeding system works if you don't know. And then obviously it also works on what happened in this previous phase. So if you did mess up the BO1s, the most likely matches to lose, like the Cloud9s and Vitality, then you get the worst seed. Like, this is just a bit whack in my opinion. It just devalues the tournament a little bit.
It does. It really, I mean, again, talking about integrity, it's the bigger picture of the integrity of the tournament and getting the best matches and the most equitable, fair setup does make, like, you have to.
Like, I'll tell you a point that Dinko made the other day when I did a watch party with him, and he's right. Except for the fact that it's not a major, tournaments like IEM Cologne are just better than the major now because they do use real seeding. They do invite all the top teams by ESL rankings. So if you're just top 16, you're guaranteed to get an invite or at least play the play-in. They do have double elim groups. They do have like an awesome setup. Like, dude, they have it all. Like, the joke is they are better than the major. The problem is, look, they can't be bigger than the major because the major is the world championship and it's what we all in history want. It's the ring, right? It's the ultimate thing. So they can't ever really overtake it. But as tournaments, they're actually a way better product, in my opinion.
Do you think that they can't I don't know, man. I'm if it really just comes down to like narrative building.
No, but it's the pros though. That's the problem. Like if you asked Simple or Carrigan, right, which would you rather win? Like 3 Colognes or a major? They would take the major instantly. You know what I mean? It's
tragic though, because
I agree. In
terms of the fans, the audience, just everything. I mean, the venue, the Cologne is a home run. Or I mean, it's not the same. It's obviously not the same format, but like a Copenhagen, the Blast fall finals or something like that. You know, that's a big event, big fan. I don't know.
That's more like trying to fucking ice skate uphill. Because if you're not Astralis, then it is like it's like Astralis is like Astralis is on the elliptical machine on like the lowest setting, and then you're on it on like 15. Like what? You know what I mean?
Fair enough. Yeah, Cologne really is actually the international event. Pretty much now. There isn't much else to it. There is something to touch on that. Actually, I'll scroll all the way back up to the top. ESL have announced their Pro Tour schedule for 2023. Katowice end of January, beginning of February. So Katowice is going to be in this. We'll see how that goes with the. We may very well just have a scuffed Katowice in that Russian players will not be able to.
That's attend. A big deal, right, dude? That's especially because people aren't thinking this through. Semmler, Dexter now plays an OG. Monacy's in fucking G2, Electronic and Perfect. Like, people don't know how many teams that would affect. It would actually just like cripple half the teams. That would be wild if that really happens, wouldn't it?
If it happens, it's going to significantly impact the quality of that. What can you
and let's be real, there's only two ways that goes. Either it then causes like a minor incident of like these top players aren't attending, or even worse, and this is the saddest one, dude. We all have to, just like with this thing now, with all the proud saying the fucked up thing, everyone just memory holes it. Or like, I'll give you an example without making a big deal. If you watch League of Legends Worlds, mate, it's like being in 1984. Because all I'll say is this: they come out on stage with a certain nationality of player and they have a normal interview. Then they come out with a different nationality that's Asian, and magically they have a different face garment on and they talk to them in a different way. And suddenly we're in a different world all of a sudden. But then they come out together, another one, and now they can just be near a player and talk to them. And it's like, why is this whiplash? Like, why am I having to pretend like this is double plus good? Chocolate rations up 20%. Like, it's fucking mental, mate. Like, that's what we're going to be like. We're going to have to, here's what's going to happen. Think about it, Semmler. You think the talent on camera is going to mention that these players are missing? How could they? They're in Poland, by the way, the country that is banning them because they have obviously the reason to be against them because of history and all that stuff in the war. So they're not going to be able to reference it. They're going to have to like pretend it's not a big deal.
Yeah,
I don't know how.
They won't mention it.
Exactly. You'll just have to pretend it's not an issue and memory hole it.
And the problem is then when it comes to posterity, you're going to have that IM Katowice. There's always going to be that asterisk, just like the last 2 years, right? 2020 through 2022, any competition during that online period, you're always going to have that asterisk next to your name where it's like
until this year.
Yeah, but that was all.
Well, I mean, even this year had the conflict thing that happened during the playoffs. So like the last three have had the asterisk. Yeah. First one was like no crowd in the arena. Second one was online. And then the third one, literally before the quarterfinals began, was when the literal conflict stuff started. And then everyone was fucking sad, unfortunately, obviously. So
that's right. Yeah, this is going to be wild. So that one is what's going to be interesting though is these two events because so Katowice, Cologne, those are the two prime time.
Here's the obvious events. Joke as well. I see at the end of the calendar they've scheduled in the IM fall, but I think I've already seen IM fall. Oh, whatever, you get the joke. Whatever, the old jokes are the best ones, aren't they? I like the way for that because they don't know where it is. It's just a globe.
It is. Like, that's the thing.
Somewhere in the world.
No China. They canceled the China event, so China's not happening. So like the globe. I mean, if it's still an issue to travel to the United States, that could be something that could. I mean, IM Dallas is still happening, but that's going to be May, so that could still work.
And you saw everyone build on that one. Like that doesn't seem like that's a winner of an event, does it?
No, Malta is still a thing for both pro league seasons, so clearly they're still going.
Oh, and you notice they've done the same thing again, Semmler. They've also done the exact same thing. They've scheduled IM Dallas for right after the major, but it'll be the blast one. Well, remember that was also what fucked it. It wasn't just visas; it's also that some teams were like, "I don't really want to go to an event a week after the major, so no, I cancelled." See ya.
Yeah. I guess they just. I mean, there must be some reason why they're actually.
Maybe they have the venue for 3 years or some shit like that. You know,
it has to be some reason, and that's the only time they can slot it in because the only times that are available here, are just going to be blast.
Oh, we'll say if you're a fan as well.
Anybody else in this calendar?
That isn't only ESL's fault. As in, when you book that event, here's why the teams all drop out days before or a week before. Because the reason they say yes to the event is they don't know they're going to do well at the major. What if they fail the major? Then you want to be at the tournament for the bounce back. But the problem is, if you finished like a bunch of them did, like top 4 at the major, then maybe you cancel. Like if you're Navi, you just lost the major. You're like, you know what? I don't think we really want to go to IM Dallas a week after our big depressing. We'll skip it. Like, so unfortunately, that's just one of those scenarios where I agree. If they've got the venue booked in or whatever, then you just you have to take your lumps on that one, don't you?
You're just hoping that it's.
I just love the way this, even though they didn't mean it this way, because they have constructed not just a Monopoly simulator, but some sort of like Illuminati shit. They've even shown like the scale of the pyramid because you start at the top level with like the really great ones. Then it's like if you drop below, it's like you have to just play in like the fucking, like every level down is like you're going down for like, then you're like a semi-pro slave. Like, it's like, what? You know what I mean? Like eventually at the bottom, you're like, now you must play in my national tournament. If you can escape that, you enter my ESL Challenger season. Then after that, you can reach my Challenger tournament. After that, you may one day play in a pro league. Like, is this like fucking Mario? Every time you think you saved the princess, like, your princess is now in another castle. Like, I just fucking did that.
And then in the meantime, you got Blast with their parallel schedule going the same way, but ESL have
Oh,
literally.
I always love
cut it
those
up
snappy
to allow
tweets,
them.
dude. Those crack me up because Ents isn't in Blast. The only way they can get into Blast is they have to play like a qualifier to a qualifier to a qualifier to get into the showdown to win it to then maybe get the Blast. It's like bloody hell! Like, how much am I working for this? It's mental, isn't it? I don't know.
It's so brutal. That's the major turnoff for teams that are not in the Louvre agreement or in the Blast deal. Like, how are you going to move if you're a TSM or something looking to move into Counter-Strike? How are you going to do it?
Oh, mate. Oh, that's the other thing as well. Half the people on HLTV are recommended the shittest players ever to TSM. Like, TSM should just pick up part of Eternal Fire. Like,
I'll just pick up.
do you miss where they said they want to be top 5 in the world and be in all the big leagues and pay all the cash? Like, they're not picking up that team. No, here's the one that I've just noticed. And this is where ESL is so cynical with their rebranding, Semmler. You're going to think, oh, I didn't know there was going to be an ESL event in Sweden. Here's the details. It's November 24th to 26th. It's in Jönköping, Semmler. That's just DreamHack Winter renamed to ESL Challenger. That's just DreamHack Winter, you fucking rats. We've all been there. That's exactly the week you go. And spoiler, no one would choose to go to Jönköping unless they go to DreamHack. It's the only thing there. It's the only thing there. Well, aside from that Straight Fire kebab pizza, I'll give them that. They've got that as well.
Yeah, they do.
That's
have that.
pretty
It
good.
used to be the place to be, man. That is the weird thing, man. Like DreamHack Summer and Winter used to be the events of the year. You had to be there. Everybody was there. It was awesome. It was a good time, and they just couldn't keep up. They got choked out. It just it sucks to see. Well, I mean, shit changes. But now,
by the way, if anyone's a new fan, I'll just tell you a very brief anecdote. It's such a cruel story, but the problem is because it's fucked up, it's sort of funny too. Like, one of the reasons why DreamHack was awesome was when it became like a proper esports product. It was rivaling ESL. They had a guy called Robert Olin who was kind of like the Carlos of DreamHack, if you know what I mean. Like, he embodied the spirit of the company. He had like a cool. By the way, he would come and say edgy things, come on talk shows, piss drunk, saying crazy stuff about geopolitics, and he was just a great character, right? And that's what DreamHack was. It was this fun rebel vibe. But what happened, and I'm not joking, guys, like, I'll say allegedly just in case like, I get in some trouble or whatever, but this is as far as I know what happened. He had some mad thing where he like sold his share. He like, for legal reasons, he like sold or gave his shares to his dad, who was like a businessman as well, and was like, I'm just going to give you these shares, but give me them right back, like when I finish this thing I have to do. And his dad was like, yeah, no problem. And then when he came back, like, yeah, can I get those shares so I can own DreamHack again? His dad was like, I'm not going to give you them back. And that, for no joke, that is what actually happened, and it made this guy like just lose his mind and just disappeared out of esports. It's actually a really tragic story. The only reason it's funny is because that sounds like some out of like a fucking movie or something, like hostile takeover by your own dad. Like, no, I'm not going to give you them back. Actually, on second thoughts, you haven't been doing very well. I'm going to keep these until you've earned the back. Like, what the fuck? It's
Dude,
like,
I don't even know all the details of that story. That
no one
story
does.
is so wild. Like, nobody knows all the details of that story, and it's actually one of those stories you don't even want to dig into because it's just fucking depressing.
Oh, it
At
is.
the bottom. So it really is one of those stories. Just like, ignorance is bliss, isn't it? Like, I don't know if I need to know all of this. But you're right. I mean, that was one of my first experiences in esports was hanging out with Too Good. And Too Good's just like, hey, you want to go grab a drink? It's like, yeah, fine. And we go to the hotel, and we go up to the penthouse, whatever lounge area, and it's like 3 a.m. and Robert Olin's just sitting there with a bottle of whiskey, and he's talking with his British accent, his Swedish British accent, just shooting this shit. And it's him and James basically at 3 a.m. just pounding whiskey. And I'm like, this is esports, okay then, I guess, like, on board, let's go. It's just fucking wild times, dude. He was great, super cool.
Back in the day where Too Good was getting fired by Gabe Devs.
And now hey, Too Good has unasked himself. He's back in the mix, so there you go. Shit changes. All right, good time for the questions. So should we take a break real quick before we do the questions?
Do you want to? I'm all right.
I'm all right. I'm not.
Screw it then. Just ask questions then.
Just keep going. All right. Let's get into the questions then. All right, GROGcoin questions for the guys who are holding GROGcoin. Guys, get in on the Discord if you're interested in holding GROGcoin. It's actually something that supports the show, and if you have a certain number of coins, you get to ask a question each week, and we answer the questions on the show. So here you go. One of the regulars, architect of Korean esports based Joe, is kicking it off. How do you differentiate? Man, how do you differentiate great film and just good film? The tepid answer is a film that makes you that you keep thinking about, right? Like, a good film is like, cool, I enjoyed that, okay, fine, and I'd never need to think about it again. like a great film will be one where it's just like you're constantly thinking about it for like days on end after you've watched it, where you're like, oh, what did this mean? And you know, what was this symbol? Was it a symbol thing, or am I imagining it? Or like, what was the theme here? Was there a moral point? Like that's when you could really start picking it apart and enjoying a film. Like that's a great film.
I'll give a similar answer, but I'll spin it this way.
Okay.
I'll make it sound like a better soundbite. As you said, a great film is one you think about after you've watched it. Just a good film is one you're often thinking about while you're watching it, or a bad film, you're thinking like, they haven't done this part that well. Like, what did they mean by that? Like, if you're watching it, I would say a great film, you're totally immersed. You're in that world. You're in your imagination. It's why I actually think that's what shows you the really great films before they had CGI. Because if something had to be done with like physical effects, if you really had tried to look and you'd had no suspension of disbelief, you'd see that the alien looked weird, or like in Baron Munchausen, like, oh, it's just like a ship on a rope or something. But if you're in the movie, you're just like, fuck, it's real. This is the shit. Like, oh, this is awesome. Like the imagination takes over. So I would say if you get total immersion, that's probably a sign. If you're just experiencing the plot as it comes, you're not thinking like, I wonder what that character's going to do, or why would this shit? Like, if you're doing that, you're probably actually getting a bit bored with it, or some of it's not quite hitting, and it's maybe good, like you're at least still following it, but you're almost trying to analyze it and tear it apart. Whereas I'd say a great film is just an experience, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, dude, I love that you mentioned Baron Munchausen.
Because I just love Terry Gilliam movies, mate. They're all great for that, aren't they?
Good on so many levels. Yeah.
It's an underrated movie.
Highly recommend it if you guys want a good movie to watch. All right. Yeah, that's so good. All right. Just Uma Thurman, dude. Uma Thurman as Aphrodite. That's, man, amazing. All right. Santiago Lafarga. As a music enthusiast, I regard man, I'm having trouble reading tonight. As a music enthusiast, I regard the current mainstream to be vastly inferior to mainstream music genres from the past. However, much of the music I now enjoy was once upon a time disregarded by many. Take, for example, rock and roll and bebop jazz. From a devil's advocate position, I wonder if my perception is skewed by time. What if the music I dismiss today is lauded in the future? I'm interested in how you view this topic in relation to your favorite music, movies, art, philosophies, and ideas in general.
No, I think he's a bit flawed there, because here's the reason why. Is what he's missing is, it's like esports. I'll give the analogy in esports. The great people in the early days of esports were truly great because there was nothing around them. They had to invent the style. They had to, like, people like Red Eye, they have an amazing fucking like on camera presence. They sort of know who they are out the box. Dude, there's casters to this day that aren't as good as people like him and don't have the chops that they do with Joe Miller and DJ Wheat and the original OGs. So I would say what happens is, over time, when it becomes an industry, you just commodify it. And as you do now with chart music, it becomes very cynical. You just have a room of people write the song and they get exactly the right beat, and they even check like they do like the right hertz or whatever, and then they get the same like melody from the one Swedish guy that writes every fucking melody for every person.
All AI generated now.
Yeah, exactly.
There's not a single top song that isn't AI generated.
Like back then, you really were just finding some guy like Jimmy Page and just being like, just give this guy a contract to write 10 albums. Like, this guy's just a genius. And then, yeah, from that, you then sell it. But it's like, it was a lot less like fucking cynical in that sense. So the problem with that argument basically is, it's like saying about anything. People try the same thing, like, oh, but back in the day, it's like, no, things can progressively get worse. It's true. You're right. Your perception might be, it's not, this is just like what it was like for my dad. It's like, no, some things were better in the past. That's not just nostalgia.
No, that's bang on the money. Yeah.
Like, if people don't know, I always say this, dude, people don't get it, right? Nowadays, some shit pop group is number one, right? Number one band in the world would literally be like Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd, like ones that are bangers to this day. Whereas that's the one thing I'll tell you right now, no one will listen to some shit chart act from 2022 in 2042, as in not like a serious music enthusiast, like, oh, incredible stuff. Like some idiot might oh, I can remember this or whatever, like as a nostalgic piece, but no one will be like pouring over those things like people are to this day.
I mean, there's yeah, I don't really have much to add on this one. I'm gonna punt. I think you hit the nail on the head. All right, Zumba. Who in CS:GO fits the description of being himself is his crime and his punishment?
Obvious answer feels like Smooya.
Well, you have that one.
Just saying.
I was gonna go with Sadokist, but
no, because here's the problem. there's also some quite cool things about Sadikist too.
Yeah, there is.
He's
But
really
he
good.
also like seems to always be his own worst enemy.
Oh, it definitely is.
So,
in some ways, I'd even say there's almost like a Shakespearean tragedy about how he wrecks
exactly,
himself. Like you can
so
see it coming a mile away
he's
as well.
so incredibly talented,
Yeah.
but he always shoots himself in the foot in one way or another. And it's just like watching it happen across the years. Where it's like, dude, you're just so fucking good at your job. If you could just keep it locked down for a little bit, you'd be, like head and shoulders above. And he always did something to fuck it up. And you're just like, come on, what is this tragic story? You're right. Okay, fair enough. And for you, Smooya, okay, you go with Smooya.
Mate, everything about Smooya, you look at him, you hear him talk, you hear him attempt to give thoughts. It's like, mate, you know what? Actually, I was going to say fuck this guy, but life already did. You know what I mean?
Brutal. All right, BZ.
The joke is, when I met Smooya first time, I said, you know what, this is, I really shouldn't do this, but I'm willing to give you a hug. And he was like, oh, I actually haven't got leprosy. This is just how I look. Whatever. It's just, I don't know. It's just out there, isn't it? I don't know. Because there was all those people going back in the day when I was scared of leprosy that were all like fucking heroes going to the colony. Like he treated me like a human and hugged me and everything. So that's what I was doing to Smooya. The Rat King.
Hey, BZ, what are some of the most memorable comebacks in history, and what locker room would you want to be a fly on the wall? Oh,
well, here's an obvious one right out of the gate. How about Fnatic versus LDLC at DreamHack Winter 2014 overpass game? Remember, they were down 3-13. They had like a scout. Like, mate, I will never forget that game till I die. That was mental, that one. Because remember, the other thing that everyone always forgets, the ones who didn't watch it, Semmler, never remember this detail. We all thought it was only going to be a thing that went for 2 or 3 rounds.
Yeah, exactly.
The fact they actually won the game off it was like, how is this happening? Like, are they really going to win the fucking game? And they did. They just kept going and won the whole game. It was mental.
Amazing. It's just it didn't the best part is that everybody makes it out like Fnatic were the only ones with the boost. Olaf, he's the only one with the boost. It was like, no. LDLC had their same boost. It's just slightly inferior. Yep. It just wasn't quite as good. But like Fnatic had the ultra boost. Like they're the ones that took it just a little bit further. But LDLC were using the same kind of boost. So
I'll give you another obvious comeback. You did the game. Astralis versus Virtus Pro. Virtus Pro was up like 13-7 on fucking CT side of train with full weapons, and Astralis had fucking Tech 9s and did like an outer push or whatever, didn't they? And not only won the round, but like won like a 1v1 or something mental. Like, yeah, it was ridiculous. Like, and that turned the entire game and they won the major off that. So that's got to be one, because that's another one where it's just like, how did that even happen? That's impossible.
Those are two of
those are classics.
Fucking bangers. I remember it. And that was such a sick setup as well with the E-League stage as well. It was just so good because it was in a theater, and so you had the booths and they put the casters in the booths. So I could literally, like, as in like opera booths, like the old guys in the Sesame Street or whatever, like, like you're up there in the booths. But that's the best part, is that you can just turn around and I could see all the fans, and I could turn around and I could see all the stage. So I could see all 10 players and see the reactions live and everything. So casting it was just the best. Like that's where I started fucking around with like just casting off the main screen, so I could just see the players at the same time, get the reactions, get everything together. It was so good. Such an epic event. Yeah, dude, E-League, man. Miss them. All right, it's go. Any book recommendations similar to Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl? Have you read
I haven't read that.
Meaning? That's it's worth. It's in that, like, his whole theme is that you can find meaning in suffering. And so he's a guy who survived I
know the premise. Yeah,
you know the premise, right? He survived the concentration camps, and was thanks to the memory of his wife, who he had just gotten married, and they got separated, and his whole thing was driving.
Oh, I know an obvious one we can recommend then. Look, it's in a very different vein, but obviously Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn. It's a similar sort of a story. It's basically about like how the sort of depths of evil of humanity, right?
I don't really feel like that one gives you like the up.
No, it's sort of the dark version.
No, it's that one kind of leaves you in the dark. Yeah. Whereas at least, Viktor Frankl developed a whole psychological approach to it. Like, if you can just plant meaning.
No, the joke of the Solzhenitsyn one is his whole sort of conclusion is like, so Solzhenitsyn, how do we get out of this scenario? Just don't start gulags. It's like, what? It's like, nah, if you start them, it's really bad and he's fucked. It's like, oh, well, thanks.
Good time.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Yeah, Australia didn't read that book. Oh. Well, there's a bunch of them there. I mean, hold on, let me see. Actually, we had because that was a man's search for me nonfiction. Actually, there was one that I enjoyed. It was "Happiness is a Serious Problem" by Dennis Prager. If you're looking for something in a similar vein, small book, quick read, and also really interesting and direct, straight to the point. And I actually enjoyed that book as well. So if you're looking for something like that, similar vein, there you go.
Also, does sound the title like it could be a quote by Stalin.
There you go. I did like that one actually, where it was the meme that was going around, where it was the Stalin edited photo, you know? Where it's
yeah. Well, the joke someone made, it was a stand-up comedian, but it's true. It's like this guy was photoshopping people before Photoshop existed.
Exactly.
I know he's making it ridiculous.
It is a real thing, and he just gets handsomer and handsomer in each photo as well. Somehow, I don't know. It's also the motivation there. All right, it's Young Badger. Semmler and Thorin, if you were given carte blanche by Valve to change the format of all majors moving forward, what changes would you make?
What would you do? Go on.
Ad infinitum. No,
What's your favorite format?
Sorry?
What's your favorite format?
Well, I mean, we're kind of talking about Cologne earlier being like the premier event now. Also, like the thing is, like Tommy and you've really sold me on just the idea of like, hey, just take the HLTV seating. You qualify into the event. Okay, cool. That was the qualifier. Now you have the teams,
reseed.
You just reseed based off of you reseed each round based off of the rankings, and then you're gonna get a good competitive tournament out of that. You're not gonna have these wacky results, because I don't necessarily have a problem with Swiss. I don't necessarily have a problem with the current major format.
No, it's like Lurpus said on Twitter. This is what you were talking about in the tweet. Lurpus's point is accurate. The flaw of Swiss is this: if it's just to qualify, you're great. Like, I'll tell you what the advantage you get from 3-0 in Semmler. You're not scared in some 2-2 game shitting yourself. That's the advantage of going 3-0. But the Swiss system doesn't actually rank how good the teams are. It just shows how good on one day you were. But we're treating it like it actually says, like, Bad News Eagles was the best team in the previous stage, so they should play. No, they're not. Like, I agree with him. Like, just reseed once you get to the main event. So if I had to change the format generally, what I would do is I would probably have the playoffs be double elim, just because I think how amazing it would be. And it would also just almost ensure you got like sort of the right champion, you know. Like, look, if someone cannot beat like FaZe twice, yeah, they deserve to win the major. Give it to them. That's cool. Whereas I've seen too many times where you can fluke a win, you know. And then the other thing I would change personally is I would have the group stage one of two ways. I'd either do it TI style, like 2 giant groups, or I'd seed and just do like, you know, maybe like 4 small groups with best of 3 GSL style. So everything's best of 3, but because the advantage of the group here compared to the big one is, you know, the 3 teams you can play, so you can sort of prep for them, and you get that element as well. Like for the week before, you're studying those 3 teams, so it'll also just make for cool angles.
It'll make for good. It'll make for good Counter-Strike. Would you keep the final best of 3 or best of 5 for the major?
I mean, I would do best of 5, but it also depends if I was doing like the double elim as well. Maybe if you do double elim, you make it best of 3 or whatever, just because there's more matches. Like if it's single elim, I think it should definitely be best of 5.
Yeah, I could get on board with that.
Because the other thing I've always said about that as well is, I agree it can be tiring and go too long, but if it's the major final, you don't want it to end, mate. You want it to go forever if it could, couldn't you? Like I always said this, think of the last major, the one where FaZe narrowly won over Na'Vi. Dude, if everyone in the venue could have voted that can there be a 4th map, we'd all vote yes. We all wanted that shit to keep going. It was amazing.
Okay. Snake Gold. What's one video game you thought you would hate but ended up really liking?
Here's the joke. Counter-Strike.
There you go.
Told this story before. I used to be a Quake player, so it was way too slow. The guns were all stupid and have all bad accuracy. Plus, if you play Quake, every gun is cool. It's like a real gun. It's like a grenade launcher. It's a plasma gun. You play Counter-Strike, as soon as you get like an MP5, you're like, is this like some Fisher Price shit? Why am I using this? Get me the AK. Like, what is this garbage? So Counter-Strike, I thought at first it was just whack. But obviously I just grew to love it because what I didn't know at the time was it was really tactical, and you could and actually think of all the elements that are not like Quake. You die and you have to wait out the round. That's really annoying at first, dude. But then you realize, no, that makes your life have more value, and you don't throw it away needlessly and just get a chance to respawn. No, I've got to play very like carefully and use my health. It's not just like I kill him and come back. I now aim him. I have to like understand that my health is important and the grenade usage. Do I have armor? So there's actually all these elements. It's like a more nuanced game basically than I thought it was when I first saw it. I thought it was just noob shit at first. Basically, I always say this, to me, back in the day as a Quake player, seeing Counter-Strike was like when people see like fucking Fortnite, like, what's this noob shit? Like, that's when I was like, you make me sick.
Dude,
And then the joke is 22 years later. Here I am still, Counter-Strike, more of that. It's mental, and it's so out of control. It got out of pocket, got out of balls.
It did get out of pocket, but also, I mean, Quake kind of let you down, didn't it?
It did, yeah.
The 1v1. No, I think it's just like the way the culture moved, dude, because I just don't think we're going to see the return of 1v1 games anytime soon. I think it's going to be team games from here on out, and that's a cultural thing, let alone just a competitive thing. Even though I think that viewer experience-wise, 1v1 is just straight fucking fire.
Shit, yeah.
So good, but that's the way it is. For me, it's actually WoW. Like, I played a shitload of WoW when it first came out in Classic, but prior to that, I played Lineage 2. And so when I saw WoW, it's kind of the same thing actually that you're describing here with how you saw Counter-Strike. You're like, what's this cartoon shit? When I saw WoW, I was like, what's this cartoon shit? I'm going to play Lineage. I like it more, the art style, whatever. Like, and Lineage was hardcore. It was fun. It was good. Like, but I had a buddy who was just like, listen, just try it once. You know, you're going to see, you know, blah, blah, blah. Just try it.
Like drugs or something. Like,
yeah, exactly.
No, for
and
free,
WoW
man.
was a fucking drug, dude. Seriously, like,
suck
that was
your
it.
dick
He
for
was
more.
like, we'll see. And then, like, I tried it, and then that was it. Like, I was done. I played WoW.
Do you know what a lot of people won't know in the modern day? Because nowadays, to be a pro, you just can't do this. It's not even on the table. Because events used to be like every 3 months for like a big LAN Semmler. There were famous players, top players, who just got addicted to like EverQuest before World of Warcraft, or World of Warcraft when it came. And famously, they would gradually become worse and worse at the game they were pro at, because they were just spending all their time in that game. And eventually, they would just leave the game and stop being pro and just go and play like EverQuest. And like the joke is, that's like the digital equivalent of if you really did walk past the guy who was doing really well in life, and then he is just like the guy in the fucking alley, like, I think you did for $5. You're like, Billy, is that you? You were the fucking prom king. It's like, hey man, you got something to spare? You're like, Smooya, how are you doing? The joke is, he's like, I'm not even homeless. I just popped out for a pint of milk. Oh, fair play then. Still won't hug you because of the leprosy. I don't have leprosy. Oh, my bad. Sorry, the face and that, you know. The joke is, Smooya doesn't go out on Halloween. You can guess the rest of the joke's going. Because everyone's like, oh, what the fuck's that scary man? Take all the candy. He's like, I'm just popping out for milk. What are you talking about? Sad thing is, normally I'm not that harsh. Because here's the thing, because fuck Smooya. When you've been as much of a rat as that guy is, like, I just all the standards are out the window. Just fuck you, Smooya. Fuck your life.
What is this?
He's just a rat, isn't he? It's a rat-human hybrid. We've said it on this show many times. Even though sadly Richard like made up with him or whatever. Yeah, it's like a famous joke. I think there's a whole episode of like Best Divided Numbers about Smooya or something. I might be wrong on that, but I think there is.
Probably.
I think there is. There's one called Rat King Special or something if you look it up.
All right. Before last question, Ace, what is the biggest crime at the major so far, excluding any armed robberies? I guess this has to do with the Rio theme going on right now and people getting chucked out because they're threatening to, well, they're not threatening, but I guess they are threatening. They're constantly verbally and
so he means what's like the biggest upset that happened or something?
No, biggest crime at the major so far, excluding any armed robberies. So I'm guessing legit biggest crime.
What does that mean?
Hell in the Cell wasn't a major. What else?
What he means at any major in history.
Biggest crime at the major so far, excluding any armed robberies. I'm guessing.
No, I thought he was implying like, I thought the joke was because he doesn't mean armed robberies. He means like what's like the result where someone sort of stole the win from someone else. You know what I mean?
No, I think he's legit saying no. This major, what is the biggest crime so far? And so he's just assuming that armed robberies have already happened at the Rio Major, and that there's so the biggest crime would be like, okay, which team got robbed? How many times, well, each time the Brazilian teams go on stage, I guess, it's just, that's a robbery in a sense.
That's true. Yeah. They tried to rob IHC, but they're just too gangsters. So they won anyway.
Yeah,
exactly. The joke is that sounded like a letter an ESL employee would write to IHC. We tried to rob you at the Rio Major with the fans, but you endured.
That is it. You're gonna start writing these.
I might just do one as a joke, like as a bad man.
Dude.
I might write one, but like really sarcastic. Like, Cadian, some people think your face is weird, but we like it. It's unusual. You know what I mean? Like, just put like, what? Just put that shit in there.
I want you to write one of those for ESL. Like at
yes,
tournament.
You're right. Yes.
As a tournament organizer.
Exactly. A lot of people said you guys sold out for billions of dollars of blood money. That's a total lie. Your parent company sold out for that. You guys got none of it. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. Yeah, you could do loads of it, couldn't you? Yeah.
Go.
A lot of people thought having a tournament in Poland was the worst place you could ever hold an event, but you knew better. Brazil it is. You know what I mean? Like, the jokes write themselves. Exactly.
Dude, you got to do this, okay? Fucking get the graphic together.
Yes.
I want to see what
I need to do, though, obviously, to make it funny is I've got to get like one of my art guys to make it look exactly like one of those letters, though, with the same
Make it
font.
look the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Please, please. All right, do it, dude. Do it. All right, Henoda. How high in the rankings could the VP Outsiders core have got if the war had not disrupted the roster and made them lose YEKINDAR?
Ooh, that's an interesting question, because obviously, like, if you look how good they've been since then, YEKINDAR's still really good. That was a team that didn't see out all its potential, in my opinion. Like, I did 100%. Think that. I think there's a world, if you look even how effective the style is now of GM, dude, there's like a world where they might have been like the 3rd or 4th best team. I don't think that's impossible. They had a pretty good ceiling, I thought, because I mean, they still have some of it now, but they're just such a hard team to play. Like, it's even people who've played them before, something about that style is just really annoying. It's just really hard to play against, isn't it?
Yeah, I know it's draining. I know the Jame time meme, but it is legit. Like, you have,
it is.
It's a long-term, like, just draining style to go up against. It just saps you. Yeah, I'm like, it is such a, like, man, it's tragic on all sorts of different levels. Like the VP Outsiders thing, the Na'Vi core and the tension there. Just there's
even the Boomage shit as well. It's like they never even kept the same lineup together. Isn't that mad?
It's just yeah, no, it's tragic. This whole situation is just so unfortunate. Yeah,
well, you say that
as far as the VP,
it's unfortunate to you, Semmler, but obviously, like Cloud9 and Team Liquid are like, yeah, real unfortunate. Opportunity, you say? I think I'll get my beak a little bit wet. I know I'm ridiculous in it. I know.
Well, they wouldn't have made it to where they are in esports if they did, right? So
true.
It's not. It doesn't come as a shock either. It's just like, okay, another day in the office. Fair enough. It really is the reality. All right, well, that's my dude. That's the last question, guys. Thanks for the questions. Be sure to get some GROGcoin, hold some GROGcoin, so you guys can ask questions. Looking forward to it. I always enjoy it's the best, good time in the show to just hear what you guys have got and get some questions, get some answers. Thanks for the support, and also thanks for all the support in terms of like the likes, the comments that you guys are leaving. All of that helps. The algo god needs a sacrifice. So thank you very much for the support and taking the extra time to go ahead and like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Really does help. But Thorin, dude, thanks so much for the show once again, dude. A banger, and we'll be back next week. See you then.
Chris is still in the picture. Still very much in the round.